Good evening. Welcome to the joint meeting of the Finance Committee, the Capital Planning Committee, the School Committee, and the Select Board. We'll call to order at 6:38 p.m. Thank you, everyone, for joining us. So the couple items here for the joint, but really talking about the FY24 financial review and the review of the special town meeting warrant requests. Wanted to pull all the groups together. We've spent the last couple of months going through operating budget, various requests that had been reduced during our FY24 planning and prior to the annual town meeting to get to that budget and evaluating what shortfalls that created, et cetera, through all the departments. Trying to get a feel for what is the 5-year outlook with the current state and what could it be for, and what would that level of service look like versus where we are today, and where wouldn't we be if we make no changes. I think we still got some work to do there on if we don't do an override, if we don't propose anything or it does not pass, what does that look like longer term? We kind of already know this year to some degree, but beyond. And also capital-wise, what is that outlook like for all the various departments, as well as what has been in the 5, 10, 25-year lists, and taking into account that all of the capital raise and appropriate funding was shifted to cover the annual operating budget. So we don't have that in theory in future years for capital. Anyway, long-winded summary, but we've kind of gotten to a draft number. Not sure it's the right number. We're not quite there yet. And timeline on how to get to a special town meeting, an election, and possibly a second election if needed, with enough time to hopefully barely set the tax rate as needed. So, yes, please.
The assessing office wanted me to clarify that because we've changed to a preliminary tax system, that if we don't have the tax rate set before December 31st, it will push the bills out further, but it just means the due date would be in May as opposed to April 1st. So she wanted me to
Because it's only
clarify that.
affecting the second billing.
It only affects the true bill that comes on the second billing, correct? Is that your recollection of what she said?
And we were operating from what date when we got to the plan from last meeting?
We were with the assumption that we had to have it done before December 31st.
Okay. So that doesn't change that.
No. So if the bills are issued before December 31st, they'd be due April 1st. If it comes after, May 1st is the earliest that they could be due.
Okay. Okay. And so, just for everyone's sake, if they weren't listening to this last meeting when we went through the whole calendar calculations and all of that to figure out what could be done, what should we do, et cetera, we tentatively set a 10/18 special town meeting date, followed by a 10/23 special election, which gives us a few days if something other than what's in there, in the final warrant for an override, if something less is passed, but it's still passed, we'll have to have a second special election, which is about 35 days after we know. And so we'll know on the 18th of October if what's on the ballot for the 23rd is passed, not passed, nothing passed, or if we need to modify it. And if we need to modify it, then about 35 days out, we can set a second special election and still hit that December 31 date for setting the tax rate. And I seem to have lost my calendar, but if I recall, our second election tentative date was around December 11th, is that right?
Sounds familiar?
Yeah, okay, in that ballpark. So that's the timeline, and it's tight. We've talked about needing to hold a informational session the week prior to the special town meeting to really explain, especially an override article and what does it mean, what is it doing for us, what is that impact going to be to the voters, what is the benefit that comes from doing that, and why is it supported. I think we penciled in 10-11 for that Wednesday prior to the special.
We've booked the school for that.
And so that's kind of high level the calendar that we came up with last time. At this point, everything has been vetted, time-wise, availability, town clerk, all that. Okay. Which is the easier part of all of this.
Do we have, I saw the emails from the moderator that first night might be difficult for him. Do we have a backup? I know we have to technically elect someone, but do we have a plan if he is unavailable? I just think it's a big meeting if we need to elect somebody that they should maybe, I don't know, because you have to elect them on the floor, I know, but I just hate for someone to, it's a big meeting to have someone get up there unprepared and not clear as to what's happening if our moderator is unavailable.
Yes, they would have to be elected on the floor, but at the same time, it's good to know if there's at least someone who plans to attend who would be willing to do it. So it's not, it is important to figure that out. I think we can look into that and have better information for the next meeting if there's going to be people who would attend who would be willing to potentially step in if needed. But it's a good point.
Maybe there's a few people, just that they can get the packet ahead of time, you know, if there's a few names that always kind of get tossed around, maybe just making sure that they have the information ahead of time for the review or that kind of thing, and I don't recall if we normally do, but will legal counsel be there, or can we have them there? I know we do for annuals, I don't recall what we do for the specials.
We usually determine if we think it's value added to have them there. So I'd say in this case, I'd agree, just to help us with any legality of any changes on the floor, et cetera, answering some of the questions. We'll find out availability. I don't think we know yet. But we may be able to get other counsel if our standard counsel's not available. We've thrown around the discussion about how other towns have done this, and the one that we keep coming back to is Norwood, and I know I was going to say Northborough, and I knew it was wrong. And the way they presented information and liking some of that. And so I think everyone has a copy of kind of how they did theirs.
I
don't
noticed
think it's
that-
exactly the same, but
Yeah, I noticed that the email that was sent, Brian, was did not include school committee.
As you're talking, I'm going.
So I just forwarded it to the 5 members of the board. So you'll have it in your emails. You had it? Okay. Yeah, I think I might have sent it, or somebody sent it earlier. Okay. So yeah, I just want to make sure you all had it. So I sent it to whatever email for the town that you have, or school. So I created I did a remake on the Norwood example of a letter from the select
before you
board.
dive into that,
Sure.
just maybe to set the stage, and if anyone wants a printed copy, we can make one if you don't have it. Some of the premise is that, you know, all of this leadership kind of came together and said, we support this, these are the reasons, across all of the functions and areas we oversee, all the financial, all the capital departments, school. the big pieces of the whole town puzzle. And so wanted to have everyone here. Are we all there? What does that support look like? And, you know, they're not small numbers we're going to get through and talk about. They're not small impact, and making sure that at least, I hope, we all have a pretty consistent and united opinion of the value of this, so we can clearly explain that and across how it affects the whole town. That's why I wanted to have everyone here. Please.
Well, before I would continue on what I was saying, I guess I would ask that question. I know at the last meeting, the Capital Planning, Finance Committee, and Select Board had all said that based on the discussion we've been having since May, basically, since annual town meeting, through that meeting, we are in favor of presenting it and going forward and in support of an override. And I think the numbers are still need to be fleshed out. But the question would be, in theory, and we'll discuss all the numbers and you can reserve your answer until after you see everything. But looking for, you know, that sort of straw poll, are you in support of, as one of the larger bodies of the budget, proposing this override to the town and to the residents, and, you know, offering your support in totality. So we can dive into the figures and the numbers, what that looks like, how it would be used, what the effects might be. So I'll let you run with that. We can reserve.
If you have comment, please. I welcome it, but if you don't yet, that's fine too. Okay. Did you want to talk about the litter piece? Or do you want to
So
talk
it was
about
just an
numbers?
example, and you, I've been notified on a couple of occasions. There are some typos in there. It was a very quick slap it together. The last week and a half have been very busy trying to get other things done, but I wanted to at least have an example of how you could, you know, we don't have to reinvent the wheel. Norwood had one, so this would be like a cover letter from the select board, why we're doing it, the purpose of it, that we support it, we asked the residents to support it. And in their packet, they had one from the finance committee and one from the school committee. And then further on, there's breakdowns about how the money's used and, you know, what services it, you know, make sure that we continue to have and all of those things. But that was just an example of how we can quickly, you know, redo it and make it our own. So that's all that is. That's just a draft form for conversation purposes.
We can talk a little bit about that. We can talk about what we should talk about the numbers before we talk about the impact, because that may shift a little, but.
Correct.
But we have
I
it.
agree.
I mean, we can recap. I think we had a couple blanks that we were talking about last time. Generally, I think we're okay on IT for this year. And I think with the stuff that we implemented coming into this year, that on a longer term basis, we should be stable in terms of like escalating costs, barring any new requirements from insurance companies and all of those things that we experienced this last year. And then administration, and we can circle back to this if you guys want, but Brian and I spoke a little bit. We talked about how kind of the overall demand on the department, you know, just the entire operations, volume of projects, et cetera. You know, it's great that we have the community planning department with Mariah now, and that brings more work and all of those things. And so I think sustainably long-term, whether it's fiscal 24 or fiscal 25, that we do need to add another staff member in the office to manage the workload and to be able to keep up with supporting all the departments, all the committees, boards, et cetera, at the pace we're going today, let alone where we might go, because it only seems to go up. So we can plug in a placeholder number. Obviously, that's not something we'll probably, even if we decide to move forward and this, with adding that in FY24 and we get the override passed, it probably isn't something that we could even be ready to begin until Q2 next year or the last quarter of the fiscal year, maybe March to June for budgeting purposes. But we need to balance that, like we talked about with the fire department, with there's only a 2.5 in theory increase, and so if we only fund 25% of that cost, there's no capacity for the other 75% in the coming year. So just balancing that piece there. And we ballparked a number roughly where we anticipate there's all the work around what is a job description and where is it going to be and all that, but we took a stab at what a number might be. And so annually, we're around 65,000 change to the budget, depending what step and what grade and all of those. And that's without benefits, right? So we'd have to also add the 20 to benefits. I would first look to the board and say concerns with that thought process at this point in terms of where we are and where we're going. It's a deeper conversation about what that look like and defining it all, but
No, I mean, this conversation started a year ago when we first realized that the amount of projects was more than one person can oversee themselves, and then having Mariah split off into her own department and no longer assisting the town administrator, which is what the original hire was for. It just left a void.
Partially,
So
yeah.
we've been talking about this for quite some time. I think if we're going to put together a package, I think that has to be included.
Yeah. Without sufficient staff to make sure Ts are crossed, Is are dotted, we're doing everything in compliance with what statutorily we have to do, reporting, all of that. If we work outside of our bandwidth, we're asking for a problem, so.
and if we're being honest, we're already there, so I
Exactly,
agree.
and yes, we.
Not doing it wrong, but just outside our bandwidth.
No, but we're sipping from a fire hose in a lot of ways, and without the appropriate support staff, eventually that could become a problem for us. So,
Any input from anyone else is welcome too, if you have any, or want to, or have concerns with that. I think generally on the spreadsheet of costs, which, don't know if we have that. I have mine from last meeting, but I don't know if we have it circulated.
No.
Okay. We can run through them again, but we had 154,000 for health insurance, and I would say that needs to go to, at least 175 for an additional position.
You all saw the response from the treasurer's office.
I haven't even gotten to that.
Okay,
Well, saw it, I'm sorry, maybe, yes,
okay, because that's related obviously to that request.
yes.
And the school department responded today about their hiring plans, and that is a printed email that you all have.
Yes. So back to administration. What's a placeholder number? That was a step one, grades, kind of stab in the dark, 65, so. Right now, it's not going to be fully expended even if it was funded this year. It's just not going to happen.
Correct.
But what number do you guys think makes sense in terms of the right balance in capacity creation for FY25 versus expenditure for FY24? Because it might be somewhere in the 20 range, 15, 20 range for a quarter this year, separate from benefits. But then we'd need to suddenly be able to increase that by another 45 to 50 in the coming year without,
Right.
under the 2.5 umbrella.
Right, and so that's where it becomes problematic, where we talked about last time. If we're not putting it in for FY24 at the full amount, and we're looking to be within the increased levy limit of the 2.5 to go from 24 to 25, it's so close at that point. I think you just fully fund it in FY24, And even if you've lost, half of the year because the position isn't filled yet, you've worked it in for the stabilization of the budget for the next 5 years. We know it'll come to free cash. We know, it won't be expended. And we're coming into that knowing that we won't expend the whole thing. But to me, it doesn't make sense to put it to a point where you're just squeaking out the ability to raise and appropriate the next year under the 2.5 levy limit because you only filled it as a partial year. So I would propose that we work the number in as the full placeholder for the full year.
I agree.
I agree. I look at it how we would tell the department head if they knew they were hiring for the next fiscal year, we would tell them to factor that in for the whole year.
Right.
And so I feel we do the same here. I just think it makes sense.
So 65.
Yeah,
it's 65, 70, 75. I don't know where that's going to land. So maybe we leave that
65,
capacity.
based
in.
on grade, yeah, and I think 65 is a placeholder that works. If the position with the job description, roles, responsibilities comes in a little bit less, then we have the capacity. We can move those funds around within the operational budget. If we end up coming in a little bit more, where the position, job description, requirements that we are looking for would necessitate a little bit more, then we have to figure that out when it comes into FY25, and whether or not we want to alter what we're looking for based on the availability of funds. I think the 65 works. It puts it, it puts it around the grade of an administrative assistant, for comparables. I think it makes sense.
Mhm.
Agreed.
Okay. Does everybody want me to go through and recap where we are by departments? We'll kind of do that, and then health insurance is near the bottom anyway, so then when we get there, we can talk through what all that data is that we've got now and how that relates to the number we already had.
Do they have this spreadsheet? No.
I can email this.
I can
Well, they don't
print
have
it
their-
right now.
Print copies in.
I was going to say I can print copies if you want.
I have it here, if you want me to just print it right now.
Sure. That way everybody can be looking at the same document and not just discussing it.
Probably helpful.
I could use a clean copy myself. I've seen it before.
Print a bunch.
Yes.
Sure. I can't read half the things I wrote on the
Include enough
last
for
one.
finance committee too, please.
Yep.
Thank you.
Okay. Thank you.
And just to clarify, the spreadsheet that's being printed doesn't currently include the school, because so far we've been told that the appropriation was sufficient. So it didn't get added onto the sheet as a request for an addition. I don't know if that's changed or evolved. I don't believe it has, but that's why it's not on this list.
I'm not aware that it has, so.
Okay.
Mackenzie, while we're on a pause, do you want me to set the podium up for you? It's right there.
Are we still filming?
What's that?
Yes.
Yes.
I'm sorry,
Yeah.
I just, out of the corner of my eye, I saw, obviously, you're, I don't want to bring too much
Let's do this for the
attention.
next hour and a half.
Nothing's coming, Jake.
Yep, one sec.
Thank you for offering.
Sorry for bringing attention to it, but
I had it ready to print. I think so.
Thank you, sir.
I'm good, thank you.
Sorry about that. Didn't have the printer installed on the laptop yet, so I thought I was prepared. Okay, so this is just a tally sheet we worked up in the last meeting with the culmination of all the conversations with the departments, department heads, et cetera, the boards, committees. We can give background, so if there's any questions on where these came from, especially those who haven't been, at the table every time, please ask. Assessor's office, 125,000. The bulk of that came from the overlay was reduced coming into this year. And then, I don't have notes on the,
200,000 for overlay and 25,000 for legal. I have the notes.
do you have them all? Okay, mine are behind me, I didn't pull it out yet. Town clerk, that's our estimate for an additional special election, which we're doing and to do this.
What was the amount from the town clerk?
6,500.
Thank you.
We just talked about administration, 65. IT, I believe we are good there. The community planning office, 5,000. Do you have all of those?
I had 30,000 total for community planning.
5 was in operational budget, 30 was in the capital, so we folded it in down below.
Right.
It's not called out. I didn't call it out in my capital list, but it should be called out as a part of the capital capacity that we created.
Yeah.
The 25 was for grant match, right?
It's gonna go to the finance committee.
Right, it's under FinCom.
Oh, that's why it's in the wrong place.
But we raised the question
Well,
about whether it should be
wrong.
a special article or not, which is, do you want the balance to close out or not, but that's where.
Still an open item in terms of the language for the, okay. So community planning 5 plus the 25 in the finance committee because that's the grant match funds. So recommended around planning and grants and having some matching funds for opportunities throughout the year that is already allocated and can be released with joint meeting to use towards grant opportunities without a special town meeting to move money from somewhere.
Is that planning, is that particular item something that's gonna be just affecting 24 or moving forward?
So the special article question kind of relates to that, which is if it's in the operational budget, then it's going to cash out to free cash if we spend none or we spent half, and then we would need to reappropriate it in the coming year. If we make it a special appropriation, special recurring appropriation, then if we spent none, we don't need to budget any because we have the 25 from the prior year and it'll just keep carrying. If we
Yeah.
spent 8, we just need to, if we choose to, back fund it with 8. So it was kind of that question of which way makes sense. We haven't made that decision,
Okay.
but we would anticipate trying to keep having it every year. Just whether we have to keep funding it every year or funding what we did spend is how that looks.
Okay.
The 5 for community planning was related to a specific
It's surveying.
surveying, thank
Yeah.
you, specific project. A lot of stuff, every time we go to do a project or to try to clean something up or deal with parcels and roads and things, we find the surveys are inaccurate or bounds are, need to be reset and things like that, so we keep spending it.
That was a cut to the operational cost of the FY '24. And looking at the number of projects that we have over the next 3 to 5 years, having that extra 5,000 available to be able to do all the surveying. We haven't just been doing like, take a street and, scar it up and resurface it. It's complete streets. So we're doing all the surveying, all the meets and bounds are accurate and everything's registered appropriately, and we need the surveying to be able to do that. So that's why we're looking to put that back in.
I have a question. For the town clerk one, is that enough in the case that we would have to do 2 special elections?
I think that was for one, but I'm not 100% sure.
One was just over 3,000.
Okay, so that was.
So that is enough for
okay.
2.
All
Yeah.
right.
In the event that we need a second one.
Yeah, hopefully not.
Yeah, hopefully not.
But, again, I'm sorry, the 6,500, you're putting that in as a one-time item or as a recurring?
That would be a one-time. So the way the town clerk does his budget annually is he literally looks at how many elections do I have, and his budget goes up and down based on the number of elections. How
Okay.
many hours are we going to have poll workers at the polls? How much does it cost me to have the ballots printed? And he
Yeah.
literally, so this would be just for FY '24.
Okay.
And then he would adjust accordingly in FY '25 based on the new number of elections.
So, looking at this chart, should we assume, although we just talked about the 25,000, should we assume that these are one-off for 24, or there's it's a mix of both one-off and
I
recurring?
think that one is the only one that I would consider a one-off.
Okay.
Only because of the way he budgets.
Yeah, okay, that's-
effectively. Everything else is ongoing, 24 and
okay.
beyond.
Recurring, okay, thanks.
But now that you brought that up, I actually want to challenge that we need to do it. We know we're funding close to our full year positions that won't be filled for the full year this year, and that's a one-time cost.
Oh,
We'll
true.
be able to absorb it,
True.
even just in the administration 65 in FY '24, and then it won't, in theory, exist in FY '25. So I think we can wipe it.
Yep,
Yeah.
I agree, because it's one time.
Because when you said that, it made me think most of these are meant to be, this is not one time, this is sustaining.
Yeah.
So it should be able to come out.
All right,
Okay.
it's zeroed out then. All right.
Okay, and then on the public safety, on the police department side, we scrapped the plans to have a cadet program with all the changes with post and what I believe is generally a shrinking pool of qualified and police officers. More than likely in the future, and even probably right now, because we are actively hiring, we will have to be sending potential candidates to the academy. There won't be a part-time, there won't be kind of the things that helped people get there before now, so basically we'll need to be department sponsored to be able to become a police officer. And so this was us starting that idea of we need to start building our bench and how are we going to have someone when we have a vacancy, and we scrapped that last during the budget reductions for '24. So the majority of it is the cadet program.
Yeah,
A
the
little
breakdown.
bit of it is
The breakdown is 50,000 for the cadet program, 15,000 for academy expenses to send somebody, and 10,000 were miscellaneous cuts that were made to the operational budget that were really close in the previous year in FY '23 and made small adjustments of 1,000 here, 1,000 there, and that's putting those back in. So it's not going to be bumping against that ceiling in FY '24, hoping to create the capacity again. And that was like things like electricity and oil and, building upkeep, things like that.
And some of the cadet stuff really was primarily, this is around wages and a few other items. The
Correct.
academy piece supports it. Part of the extras was equipment too.
Yep.
Uniform and things that we took, wouldn't be carried if that didn't exist. And then on the fire department, Chief Wonka had brought a proposal on adding another full-time firefighter to bring the staff to 4. And this was the anticipated cost to do that. Close to full year, but there's a little capacity in his budget, and he felt like it would be enough on an ongoing basis, out a few years at least at this point, to be sustainable. That's what I
Yeah.
recall.
And so for those that haven't been following, the reason he's requesting a 4th is part of the standards just recently that we are trying to adhere to is they call it the 2 in, 2 out rule. To be able to effectively arrive at and fight a fire scene, you should have 2 people that can go in while 2 people remain out. We don't currently have that. We have to wait for on-call to, volunteers to show up. We have to wait for mutual aid to show up, so they can arrive, but they can't enter. They have to work on the perimeter only until they get that 4th body, and they'd like the capacity to be able to show up and be effective immediately in doing that role. So that was the ask. This was one of the positions where he felt we underfunded it in FY '24, but based on 2.5% increase, he felt with his current budget plus a 2.5% increase for FY '25, he would be able to fully fund it without having to front load it all in FY '24.
Right. The 35 is not the full headcount cost.
benefits as well?
We had, that's part of the health insurance, yeah, that one, that's why it grew up to 175, because every time we had a additional, we were trying to embed it in that so we wouldn't run short.
So,
But we're gonna rationalize that number.
Yeah, we have to work on that one.
just thinking about this, I know he said initially that if my notes are correct, that the position itself is about a $50,000 position. Knowing that we're trying to long-term plan, I'm actually wondering if we shouldn't be fully funding that position, because we don't know what things like electricity and that is gonna run this year, and if he's tightening the bootstraps too much, I don't wanna see his department overrun at a position and then overrun and then be in the position where we're scrambling to find the funding. And so I would almost say, based on the same theory as with the administration's office, I would fund the position fully for FY '24.
At 50,000?
Yeah, and then that gives,
It's funny, I was thinking the same thing, you beat me to
that gives
it.
some play. Electric rates should be coming out fairly soon because it's the end of summer, but
Yeah.
it's not gonna go down, and if we're looking at 5 years,
Yeah.
then that's not a very big cushion in that budget.
15,000 over 5 years, no,
Yeah.
not very much.
And I also think that for the police department, we need to do the same thing because there was only $5,000 in his budget for the academy. And we could potentially be having to send 3 people to the academy. And we said that that was $15,000 apiece.
Yes, but
I think it's only 10.
yeah,
At a,
I think you all estimated higher, and then you met with chief.
we did.
Work back through the numbers with
oh no,
you.
we did have 15 per. That is my notes, sorry.
Was it? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, my notes do say 15 per.
Yeah, I think by the time we figured everything out.
With
that's
equipment
about-
and ammunition
Yeah.
and everything, it comes out to about 15,000 in totality.
And we have 1 in his budget already,
We
right?
had 5, I thought, $5,000.
We only have, yeah, we cut the academy down to $5,000.
Mhm.
So we don't even fully fund one for FY '24.
Putting 15 back in, he thought he could be able to pull from other areas within his budget. That put him at 20. He would be a little bit short, but felt like he could send a second within his budget. But I think based on the same logic, we might be able to increase that by a small amount to it's not very often in operational needs that we'd be sending three officers in 1 year. So if we're talking about increasing the annual appropriation,
Right.
I'm not sure if that makes sense to put it in there, or if we have a workaround to ensure that we have it for a one-time, because of the anomaly of transition that is happening right now.
But we're looking at two things too. We're looking like for this physical year and next, and if it's this physical year, we won't have it.
Well, but I think it's the idea, like I said, about the town clerk's budget. If it's one time, is there a way that we can capture it in FY '24 within what we're already doing without adding more cost? And I think
With a shift.
two things. One is if we increase fire, and that's capacity for the future, not need for the current year, that is in the same budget section, so we
Oh,
can,
yeah.
from a totality for the year, we can shift that 15 to cover a second academy. And then in terms of what was kind of left over at the end of the fiscal year in public safety, police had a little bit more than fire, and that was some more potential capacity because it didn't spend as much. Then close to 50, so there was a little more of a cushion there in his budget. So I think between that, we could capture,
A third.
Yeah, as long as we
third.
think we have it.
Yeah,
it's a good point.
I think we do, where it stands.
Yes.
When we send these officers to the academy, is there any, and you may not know this, but is there any agreement made that these officers work for the town for a certain amount of time? It seems like an awful lot of money to spend to train somebody who then can walk away 2 days later. I mean, I know if you get trained to be a bus driver, they require you to work for them for a year to kind of recoup the cost of training you to be a bus driver. We don't, I'm just, I mean,
We have done it before in the past. In my time on the board, we did. You gonna say you were one of them? No, sorry.
Yes, I was. So,
Please.
maybe, I could speak to this. There have been times in the past where a 3-year commitment was required. What I will tell you is we are now in a situation where with the other municipalities we're competing against, they are offering significant signing bonuses. I know of one particular situation that happened here in Franklin County where the hiring agency on a lateral paid off the balance due because it was a 3-year commitment prorated. But they said, okay, we want X officer, and this is how much is left on their commitment, and they agreed to offset that.
But we still get
be
them- yeah, we still
recouping
recoup it,
our
Right, we're
money. So,
right,
I mean,
yes.
what stops them, and again, I don't want to waylay this too much, but what stops them from going to the academy and then turning around and going to another town that offers a great signing bonus or more money or whatever? We've now paid to train that
What's
person
our
to go
current-
work for another
Absolutely,
town.
and we,
Current language.
you know, that experience happens here quite regularly. Having that 3-year commitment, which I was in favor of when I was hired by the town of Erving in that capacity, and I had every intention of honoring that commitment, and I did. But there are some people that, at the end of the day, when they sit back and reflect, and they have to do what's best for them and their families and their concerns, and they're able to make that lateral move, we can only wish them well. But I agree, I see where
Right,
you're
but
going, and I fully
they're
agree to say, okay,
recouping
so.
some of that money. If you
and
buy
we wish
out
you
of your
nothing but
contract-
the best, but we'll kindly take the check
Yeah.
for X amount of dollars.
Yeah.
Thank you.
'Cause we
I
have to
mean,
do it
do what you
again.
got to do,
Yeah.
but
Right.
we would then be
Sure.
recouping some of that
Yes,
cost.
absolutely.
That's all I'm trying to say. I mean, I
Yep.
think it's an amazing benefit that we would send these, officers there to get trained, and I'd like to see a return on that investment somehow. Again, I'm not sure that tonight is a
Right.
place to be dealing with that, but if we're putting it in our budget, we're asking the taxpayers to pay for it, I just feel like we should then get
Right,
some.
and also in the backdrop of all of this, we are also working on how we're compensating our employees, because it's not, I'm not speaking exclusively to PD right now, but, you know, we've recognized in past discussions that we need to be competitive in the workplace, and we want to compel the people that we recruit. You know, we want to recruit the best talent and retain the best talent. So we're, in other parts of the town business, we're working to address that so that, you know,
Yeah, I mean, a
it's not
$15,000
as enticing to take our training and bring it across the river or someplace else.
it's just a $15,000 investment we're making in a person.
Mm-hmm.
I would like to have some sort of, you know,
I-
assurance that they're going
Guaranteed
to.
return?
Yeah, I mean,
No, I
either
agree.
work it off or if you leave, I mean,
Pay it
again,
off,
in the
yeah.
bus company, you gotta pay it back if you leave within a year.
Just waiting for it
That's
to.
part of recruitment. I mean, as you said, sometimes that's part of what you negotiate. If you're gonna leave, I got a bill you gotta pay.
Yeah,
And at the end of the day, that town that might pay that, might hire someone early, didn't pay the 15. So paying 10 or 5 instead, same equation, right, for them? So the only thing that I think we're maybe cautious about and trying to think a little more thoroughly through is the idea that other departments around us are not requiring that, but are sending people to the academy. So are we impacting our ability to recruit against other towns and cities around us, which some are going to have things that we can never offer in, you know, ability to grow, to move up, to, you know, potential, even compensation.
Yeah.
We're looking to be competitive, but there's always a limit. So, not saying we won't, and we haven't gotten there to determining if we're going to do that again or not. I
It's
think
currently-
since we stopped,
But it's currently there.
have the last couple been there?
Yeah. It's
Is it currently
Article
there?
13.
Did you just pull the contract?
Well,
Yeah, okay. Brian did, okay. So it is,
Yeah.
it is.
It is
not
a 3-year, currently it's a 3-year, and
It
it's,
is.
it's prorated
Yearly? Or
by
monthly?
month,
Monthly.
okay.
over the 3-year period.
Out of curiosity, I have 2 questions. How enforceable is it? And
That's
B,
the
how
other
much is
piece.
it gonna cost us to enforce it? So if we're paying 15 grand to train them and they leave and we can't enforce it, or it's gonna cost us 30 to get that back, then it's kind of a moot point.
Generally, it's in the union contract, and that's the current active contract, so it has a fair amount of legal weight because of that, even beyond what we would have done as a town separately from the contract. At the end of the day, you know, they can always fight it. There's a cost for the employee to fight it too. So generally, it comes down to how far away are you from the end of it? How much is it worth chasing it?
Sure.
If it's 20, you know, if it's 6 months past the completing the academy, we're probably going to push to get a majority of that,
Yeah.
at least, even if we settle on something different. If they've got 3 months left, it's probably not worth it if they're not just going to do it. You know, so I think it just becomes practicality
I
at that
agree.
point.
I just think it also might help with the revolving door. I mean, we do want to retain the people that we're training,
Yeah.
so,
Yep.
you know, hopefully they stay because they want to stay, but if not, we have this, you know, in the background.
But the short answer is we currently have a mechanism.
Excellent. Thank you.
And we could get numbers, I think it's probably been about 50-50, whether people have stayed at least 3 or not that we've sent over the years. We've had both. So, public safety, we are leaving PD at 75.
I think so.
Capacity for academy coming out of the potential excess there in the general plan, as well as the excess in budgeting fire now at 50, right? For the full year additional.
Yes.
Sorry, I'm just taking notes. Highway with 92,000 in the recommended number, which is an additional position as well as 35,000 in other operational cuts that we did in '24.
Yeah.
I don't have what it
To
was.
to clarify the additional position, though, so we have not had a highway foreman for several years since our current superintendent left the position of foreman, left it vacant, and became the superintendent. We went without a foreman for several years. We've recently made an internal promotion. We have our foreman sitting over here, who's now so vacating his old position. So that puts them back to the full staffing that they were at 6 years ago. So it's been quite a while that that's been vacant, but with the amount of projects and the ability to maintain them all, we're trying to get back to that level of staffing that they were at several years ago. So it's not a creation of a new position, it's finally getting to backfilling one and taking some of that burden off of the superintendent from having to do the foreman's position, the superintendent's position, and sometimes backfilling as an operator all in the same day.
I think it's been 9.
9
or
years
10.
now? Okay, so
Well,
it's
I
been
think it was
quite a
before
while.
my time, and I'm here 8+. in
Okay,
this
there you
seat,
go,
so-
yeah.
And we also do not any longer have an admin assistant part-time in the highway.
Right.
We haven't for a handful of years.
Oh, what? I'm sorry.
An admin assistant?
Oh, admin assistant.
Yeah,
sorry.
it was
I
a
just couldn't hear you.
part-time, no, that's fine, sorry. Part-time admin assistant, which was helping with the administrative paperwork, et cetera, with the superintendent. So kind of over the years, we've expanded what we're doing, what we expect, but not the staff has gotten smaller, so. Do you have notes on the 35 portion of that?
35 for which one?
Highway.
I do not. I was going to ask you.
Okay.
I
I
have
have it
notes
in
on
here.
almost every other department, and for whatever reason, I can't find. Yeah, I mean, I have the 92 total, but for whatever reason, I didn't have the notes of the breakdown.
So it's a highway person and an admin assistant?
No,
No, just like where we were from 9 years ago, we had
Oh,
a
just
foreman,
comparison.
Yeah, just
moved to a
comparison.
superintendent
I got
vacancy. Admin has never been backfilled since about 5 years.
Okay.
So I have contracted survey services for 5,000, surveying services for 25,000, and vehicle repairs for 5. Because we moved the roadwork improvements and bridge repairs, those are under capital now.
And so we heard surveying for planning, and then you
Oh,
heard
that's right,
surveying
yeah.
for highway. The surveying for highway is really around roads, road layouts and those things, and really the complete streets piece. The surveying and community planning would be other parcels, work around, we've done with conserved land, with all kinds of different areas where we need to survey over the years, give some capacity to do that. Wastewater Enterprise Fund. Did Pete provide a number for fuel? I have not seen anything back from him. No?
I don't believe they responded.
we have it earmarked right now at 12.
And so a few pieces where that budget was
We had,
basically at 0 last year, and then some. It was, so the budget coming into this year is definitely looking to be short. So about 8 in testing, 7 in chemicals, 13 in sludge disposal, 5 in electrical, and 12 in fuel. We might have forgone the 5 in electrical.
I
I
think
don't
we
think that
did.
math works, but
Yeah.
those are the pieces that came together to get to the 39.
So can I ask, I'm gonna try to do this as nicely as possible, because I really don't like calling out department heads. We've asked on 3 separate occasions, and he's had 6 weeks to get us this number. Is there a reason why we can't get the fuel number?
I don't understand why there would be. I will call him in the morning. And we'll have one
I mean, I know we're working with estimates.
by
but
Monday.
We're kind of coming down to crunch time, and we asked for the number to be ready for tonight, so I feel like 3 meetings worth of time is generous. And it's a little frustrating not to have the information.
We'll get it. I agree. And I will talk to him about it, and then I will call myself if I have to get it, if it can't get done otherwise, but it should get done. Under Health and Human Services, the only department to bring something forward was Senior and Community Center related to programming, which was a cut from the original 24 plan.
Right.
Library and Culture and Rec was the only Culture and Rec department to bring forward something, and that was, again, programming.
So one note on library, when I was going back and reviewing my stuff for this meeting, she did talk about in the memo that she put forth, adding a position. And so I don't think we've talked about that, and we most certainly haven't talked about the funding for that position. But it was in her memo,
For long range.
yes.
It wasn't for 24 though.
It wasn't for 24, but this budget, if we're looking for 25 to stay within the 2.5, I'm sure an additional position that they're anticipating for 25 would push that small budget well over the 2.5 increase.
I would say there's a few things around the library budget. They overspent this last year too. And there's some funding things that I'm thinking it's probably too soon to do it Monday, but maybe in the board meeting, one of the next 2 board meetings or 3 board meetings, we need to have them come and talk through that with them, because there's some funding issues around the library project, et cetera, so.
I'm looking in the audience. She wasn't prepared to speak on behalf.
Oh, I wasn't even looking at you. Wait, this wasn't on the agenda? It wasn't
no.
one, it's just as we're talking about this, I think there's a variety of budget things that I think need to be discussed with the trustees and the director and understand where are we, what needs to get done, and where are we going. That doesn't answer the question today, but
Yeah,
for this number.
I have it. It was a 14 to 19 hour, and somehow I missed. I know it's in the memo. I want to say she said a $20,000 position, but that might be way wrong. I just don't want it to get missed. It was in her memo. We haven't discussed it, and I just didn't want it to fall through the cracks.
Just give me one moment, I might have it here. G. Just the meeting before that. It's from the meeting before 8/21.
Yeah, $14,000 to $20,000 is what she states for a library assistant position of approximately 14 to 19 hours per week, starting in FY '25. It looks like she's looking for a position that would work on 2 days a week. Oh, and there was some other stuff. She did request a line for makerspace supplies, potential increases to building maintenance, facility monitoring and software, and then, of course, the 20% budget increase to stay in compliance with MBLC. But I'm not seeing, unless I'm missing it, I don't see where she puts in a number for the makerspace line.
That may just be under materials.
Yeah.
And I don't see where she lists what she would like for increases to the maintenance, monitoring, and software lines.
I think to me, those are what every department has. You're gonna have inflation, and that's, we hope, going to be covered by 2.5% every year.
Yeah, I
At
think
a
the only
minimum.
one that would put them outside of that is the additional part-time.
We're not finalizing the number tonight, so we can put in a number and or earmark a number and then come back to it when we get some more feedback. If we do 20,000 plus the 20%,
Right, what's that,
plus
24?
benefits, it would be
Well,
44.
It would be.
Or 45.
It'd be no benefits.
Oh, yeah, no
14
benefits.
to
Yeah,
19.
that's right. 20, so 20 to 25 in that range to capture that.
So you're saying 25 total for the library, that's inclusive of the 18 that Charity requested?
I think with 25, it should be able to
It'd
be
be close.
inclusive.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
definitely. I will connect with the chair on kind of the bigger picture stuff, the whole thing that I wanted to discuss, Brian, in terms of library budget and project and all that. But can you just send a note to them and, do we have to finalize this? No, we don't have to finalize this on Monday, do we? The
I thought-
STM?
We need the
Yeah.
Monday
We do.
night.
Yeah,
Monday.
we do, okay.
Yeah, we've only got a few days.
I guess just send a note, if you would send a note to the chair and just say, this was in what the director presented. I don't know if that was discussed already and that's where they are in terms of long-term plan, or just an opinion if that's, makes sense to put that in. Just to get, because we haven't had that discussion with them, if that's part of their plan or that's a tentative or where that's at, so.
If it makes any difference, her memo does say it was reviewed by the Board of Trustees on 8/1/2023.
I'm glad you have it in front of you to say that. Because I don't, then never mind. So are we going to placeholder that at 25 then?
Yes.
So are you just gonna put like a little asterisk next to it? Because again, this is a 2024. To know that in the following year, there'll be a bigger expense.
That is the bigger expense.
Right, but we're funding
Right.
it in '24 for something that's coming in '25.
Right.
So knowing that we're, instead of coming back to the town every year saying,
Need another override?
need another override, because we're at that, like, minute cap, or capacity, I should say. Yes, a little notation saying that we're working it in '24, but knowing that that may be floated somewhere else if we need it, but for '25, it will be utilized with the library.
Was it 25 plus 1,800?
No, 25 total.
Just 25 is not fine, okay.
And you factored in the 20% in your 25 number?
I took the 20, added 20%, add the 1,800, we're within
It was,
1,000.
it was
so
close, because it's not going to be funded this year, or it's
Yeah.
not going to be utilized this
Yeah.
year. It's just a placeholder that can grow for next
Yeah.
year.
Okay.
So,
So before we get into capital, we got health. So we had 154 before tonight. Now we have 175. We had, frankly, kind of a spitball list of what we thought needed to be there. I believe, correct me if I'm wrong, FY24, we level funded originally was 70,000 higher, right? Or is it more?
It was 1.36 million for, and it was budgeted at 1.29.
Okay. So 70 of that was bringing back the capacity, because we're talking about this because there is no capacity.
Because we did have a 6% increase in rates this year.
And this 175, does that include the 4 positions from the school or no?
I think we need to go through that whole formula right now.
Yeah.
I know
That's what we're gonna try and
Jen
work
provided
through.
some, and then we just talked through positions that we had added here that weren't part of the budget, and so
Okay.
we need to figure out that sum total.
Okay.
And the capacity that we have in the budget, which is very little for positions that we knew we had to backfill or were expecting to fill. So there's 70 from last year. If I'm going down through this list specifically, we have 2 in public safety, 1 in public works, and 1 in administration in terms of added from FY '24 original plan. Benefited positions.
You added police,
I'm sorry?
police.
Administration, police, fire, and highway.
That's four, right?
That's four.
That's
That's
four.
four ads outside of school and outside of what we may or may not have capacity for. So that's kind of where we're.
So last week, we started with 154, and we're already adding 24680, we're already over two.
No, the 154 included those. Because we had those on the list last week.
Okay.
Right.
What was
And
the-
we had those on the list. We had 70. I feel like I have notes on that too. Maybe I do. At the same time, I think we can just kind of start over and see where that lands us compared
Yep.
to this number, and then go from there, because I think we'll have better data today than we had then. Here it is. I had that as seven, that would cover 7 positions, that 154. So it was the 4 we knew about plus 3. We knew there was probably at least 1 or 2 in the school that wasn't originally planned because it wasn't filled last year in terms of benefit planning. So the 154 came out of 7. That's how we got there.
But did you bring it up to the 70 that we had already needed for this year? Because-
That was
okay, so that wasn't
just-
even included that, right?
No,
We need that just to
basically-
cover our bases for this year for the positions that are open that we had budgeted for, but needed to cover.
I think yes.
Okay.
Basically, we had the 4 plus the buffer, and that was all we had in that 154.
I mean, we could look at where we're at,
The 1.28 million right now, and then add all the positions that we need to fill, including the ones that we're already budgeted for, including the new ones, and then go from there, or
however you want to approach it, it's fine.
Let me pull up your memo because I don't have it in front of me. If someone else does and wants to start, please do.
It should be in the packet.
But I do have Caitlin's right here. So there were 4 unfilled paras, unfilled in unfilled in FY '23 paras,
Yep.
which means those were not in our benefits budget.
Right.
And the ELL would not be a benefited.
It will
If
be.
it
most
would
likely
be?
will be.
Okay, I see point 2, but that's an
Right,
increase
but
from
it says
something?
It most definitely will be increased based on the needs.
I remember,
Okay.
yeah, the last
Past,
so-
conversation.
past a halftime person, so,
So that's 4 to 5
yes.
positions in EES that we did not carry a benefit capacity for.
I would
And-
say two of the pairs. 'cause
Yeah, I was
two-
gonna say-
It wouldn't be 4, because that's what I had in my list. I
Yeah.
had 2 pairs, not 4.
Right.
I need to pull up your list.
Because they had been
Yes.
unfilled for 2 years now, so some of them were embedded in and just didn't get filled. Does that make sense?
And we carried them again in our budget plan.
Well,
Or
that's-
have the capacity.
Only two.
Only 2 of them.
Okay,
Two of the
okay.
correct, yeah.
So that,
So your list is 2 paraprofessionals that had gotten dropped off of the embedded benefits composition, a librarian, an adjustment counselor, pre-K teacher. But pre-K teacher was already on there, correct?
Right, well, all those other ones, those are just ones that we currently need to fill right now. And so, again, I was kind of looking at the perspective of what we're at right now, the 1.28 with, because I went through our bill and I wrote down and I
Yeah.
provided all that data.
I saw that. It's just, it's a lot of data and
It is, sorry.
I'm
Probably too much, but.
quite simply, I'm just looking for how many are we short? Because I look at all this and I get lost in the numbers of how many we have.
So
and
we'll
how
be
many-
short 3, 2 paras and 1 ELL teacher.
And
Because
those are
2
the 3
paras
that
were
not-
already in there.
Yeah, that were not part of the health benefits calculation, so 3 out of the school. Okay. Oh, there was a comment at the last school committee meeting, and I brought it up at our last meeting, when talking about the future hire for a van driver. I think you had mentioned the words full-time and 1 backup, and I didn't know if you meant full-time as in over 20 hours, or full-time as in like a permanent person.
Full-time
wanted
is
to
in
make
over
sure.
20 hours.
So that's not part of the calculation that you just gave us. That's an additional one.
Right.
That would be true, yes.
That,
Yes,
just-
that would be.
those words rang in, I was like, full-time, that means benefited, and we were thinking that might be a part-time position. But that
Yeah,
was just
I don't think
based
the
on
hours work right, so
Just-
for it to be a half-time, of less than full-time
19.
position. Yeah, yeah.
And yeah, hit more than 19 any few weeks in a row, and it's automatically going to be considered,
Because the.
Benefited
students have to go
anyways.
5
Right.
days a week and it's a drop off and a pickup, so.
yeah.
Yeah.
So let me back up. You provided all that data. The summary is we're at 1.28,
Correct, yep,
and that is employed today.
right, and that's not including the list that I had
Right,
provided, correct.
so,
Yep.
so we only have 15,000 or 10,000 left in the budget right now.
Right,
10?
as of, yes, 10.
Yeah, 10.
Yep.
If nothing changes.
If nothing changes, right.
Right, if, today we have 10, with no change capacity beyond that. We have, because now it doesn't matter whether it's 2 or 4, it's all of them, because we don't have any capacity. And that number has no capacity, right, that's currently hired.
Correct.
So 2 paras, library adjustment, and pre-K, that's, and then I need to add ELO. So
Yes.
that's 6,
Yep.
And a van driver.
and a van driver,
that's
7.
What we
Wait, wait,
hire
wait.
this year,
I'm sorry, are you saying you have to add a pre-K?
So what I'm saying is the current benefit costs with all the enrolled employees who are hired and work here today only leaves us $10,000 in our benefits budget for the
Yep.
rest of the year.
Yeah, I
So
got that.
Anybody we hire, we have to have capacity
So
for
currently
benefits.
right now,
So
we don't.
everybody we need to hire from today on
They did not, they have not.
need benefit
Right. Okay.
capacity
Whatever capacity we had got eaten up
by
by
wherever
level
we
funding
are.
it, by
Or
pulling, by
changes,
dropping.
increases,
yeah.
6%.
Gotcha.
So,
So basically, we have capacity for someone to take half the plan.
right.
And one employee that we haven't hired yet, and we have a whole list of people. So I just want to go back from the top and say,
Yeah.
in terms of school, and I'm just trying to compare what Caitlin has versus what's in your list, Jen. So there's a note of 4 paras,
Yep.
but that doesn't change the para times 2 to 4, does it?
if they hire for all 4 and they're, I don't know what the FTE is. I mean, they would be point
They
five,
were-
so
yeah.
regardless, so that would,
Yep,
they
they
would all
were
be
all,
benefited.
they're all
So-
benefited, yes.
Yes, so then that does.
So
bump
four.
it up.
So starting
Yep.
over, 4 para.
What happens if someone goes on leave and like a replacement has to be hired? Is that an additional
Yep.
Yep.
need?
Well, wait a second, what did you just ask?
Like if a teacher goes on leave,
It would be a sub, and they don't get benefits.
Well, if you use a subline or unless you're using.
but if you posted it as a like
permanent
long-
fill.
Long-term
long-term
sub
sub.
don't get benefits.
I
Okay.
did when I was a long-term sub in East Hampton.
They don't any, I mean, not currently would you get benefits. Because you're not you're not considered like a full-time part of the, I don't want to use the word full-time because they technically are full-time because they're working a full-time, but not part of the
Workforce.
workforce. Subs don't get benefits.
Okay.
It's a different pay, but not benefits.
At the end of the day, and although it's going to make the number even bigger, I think we need everything that we know we need, and then we need capacity, because we have none. So if that was or wasn't right, we hopefully would have capacity, or if it changed, I should say.
Correct.
So 4 paras, a librarian, adjustment counselor, pre-K, and ELL,
And a driver.
and a driver.
It's 9 total.
Yeah, I'm just trying to put the list, because I'll look
Yeah.
at some list later and be like, what positions
And then
are
going
those
back
right?
to public safety was 2.
Are they just using subs?
1 public works and 1 admin, so 4 total.
They don't have any.
I don't think so, hang on. I think that's short, like 3 more, 2 or 3 more.
Need fire.
I'm missing, so 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9. All right, I got the 9 for EL, sorry, I was just being slow. So, police, we are currently hiring for 3?
Right, but
2?
those
Now,
are
what
all,
do-
those are all benefited positions currently, and they're worked into the budget.
They're not.
Right, but we're working backwards, we're working on what
They're
we're
changing
currently-
the
right.
approach, so they're
No.
working off the bill instead
So,
of what was.
so hang on, today what we've spent has no capacity for the people we need to hire and backfill.
So then, yes, 4 for public safety.
But hang on, did that make sense? So we have vacancies and the current spend on the employees who are here, not the ones who we need to backfill, uses up all our benefit budget.
So I just want to go back to this,
Right,
when you
so
say,
hiring police officers that we have an open ad for requires benefits that we do not have capacity today.
so when you're looking at this breakdown of employees as of 9/11/23 for current health insurance enrollment, that does not include the vacancies that were just created through,
Correct.
Public
They were taken
safety.
off the bill, they were taken off in
Okay.
July. And I've worked on the most recent bill.
Got it. okay?
So everything we're
So-
backfilling and hiring for is bad.
Every position.
That's why I said it's
Okay,
like gonna be
fair
a
enough.
bigger number,
Yep.
unfortunately.
So fire 1, admin 1, because those would be the new ones. Highway, you said 4?
No,
No.
hang on.
Okay.
Fire, highway is 2. Highway is 2. We have a backfill and the vacancy created by adding the foreman or adding the foreman. It's a net. We net added one to the department and we have net a vacancy.
Right.
So we have
We'll
2.
keep adding the custodian to the highway department. It's a separate department.
I'm gonna make it public works and it's gonna stop being that problem.
Yeah, call it Public Works.
That's gonna be a FY24 issue.
Just want to
We're
be
not
clear with
there yet.
everybody. It's 1 for
No,
that
you're
department.
right, and for right now, we should put it that way. So 1 firefighter, 1 highway, 1 building and grounds maintenance.
Mhm.
Police, we have 2 vacancies today, and
a
a
cadet.
cadet would be 3.
Correct.
Admin 1.
That's 8.
Are there other vacancies that I'm missing? Because we've put out the ads for all the
Benefits
vacancies
eligible that I'm
today.
aware of.
Not benefits eligible ones?
Yep.
16?
I had 17.
Did I hear someone over there has 18?
No, no.
Oh, okay.
No.
Do I hear 19? 19? No.
No.
I have 16. Okay.
Was there 8 from, 9 from school and 8 from?
Yeah, that's what I had, 9 from school and 8 from
I have
everyone else.
7.
Oh, 7 per time, yep, so 7.
Because it's 1 highway, 1 building ground, not 2 highway, 1 building ground, right?
Correct.
Does that get us to 7?
1 building and ground, 1 highway. Oh, yep, you're right, I added police in there from my previous,
Do we have the
Yep.
librarian
16.
16.
job at the school?
Doesn't
So
change
we-
my,
So we have 16 and a 10,000 excess from there. So is that 19 or 20? I mean, we need some capacity for change
So
and the
typically,
unknown, right?
the additional is what, 3 to 4? For any fiscal year, potential?
Typically, well, we usually know what the rates are ahead of time, so that's how I budget, because we've had level funding for the past
Several years.
3 years,
Yeah.
actually. This past year was the only year that we went up 6%. So again, we usually know, but in January is when we usually know when the rates are. We have the insurance meeting.
But what do you have as a buffer? What do you have as?
Oh, a couple extra people, yes, sorry.
That's what I'm
It's-
saying,
yeah,
3 to
sorry,
4.
Like 3 or 4, yes.
3 or 4
People, yes.
people,
I apologize,
yeah.
yes. I thought you were asking
Well-
percentage.
No.
And we should call it plans. We budget for plans
21,000,
because any
yeah.
life event that happens throughout
Correct.
the year
Right.
for an existing employee may trigger a change in their benefits.
They could have the lowest one that's costing us 5,000
And they need
and
a
next
family.
week it's 21.
So
Correct.
is 400 realistic for 16 open positions and a buffer of 4? Is that really the math I'm getting?
I'm adding 420 because I used 21,000, but yeah,
And
that's,
mean,
it's
a little
really
high, and
like
again,
21.5,
That's
so.
an estimate that every single person hired is gonna
Yeah.
have a family plan.
And
Correct.
So
Which you
that,
have
they're
to
not
do.
always going to, so.
Right.
I think you'd shave a little bit off of that. I can't imagine that every single
Or
person that we hire.
it creates capacity in and of
It
itself.
does.
Yeah.
Because not everybody's going to select
right.
a family PPO.
Right.
And that's also how we were able to keep it level funded for the last
Yep.
3 to 4 years. Of
Well,
having
no,
that
you mean that
capacity.
the rates have been level funded, right? Or you mean the
The
budget?
rates have been level
Well,
funded.
rates
but
have
we
been level
had-
funded
We had the
too.
past
Correct.
year, we had that worked in there, we were fine.
Right.
That 6% is like $70,000+. So there was
That right there.
what we expected to increase it by.
Yep.
So, and we still probably be at a deficit. I don't know, I got 20 positions at 21.5, it's close to
430?
21.5 to 22 for full positions,
Well,
right?
I would ask the treasurer, what number would you like us to
Yeah,
estimate? what?
that's 430, you know, you tell.
Is it 20, is it 21, is it 22?
What, the, per person?
Yeah.
It's 21, it's like 21.5.
Okay.
Yeah, or 21.6.
Okay.
22.
Which is why I rolled it to 22
Depends on how
last
technical you
time.
want to get, sure.
Well, 20 positions, so plus 4 at 22 puts us at 440, 440,000.
Yeah, 440.
So, back to Deb's question, what's the number you'd like to see? To,
I feel bad asking for too much.
absolutely.
Would you feel worse coming back and needing more?
It's true, good point. Good point.
We can't be there.
And how often, I know we've great plans, so I'm sure it's a pretty low number that don't take the plan, but
Right, I think I was doing breakdowns and I was doing it by department and I had started with the school and there's 5 at the school that do not take benefits, but I hadn't gotten to the rest of the town side, who doesn't take benefits. And this also includes retirees insurance as well.
Right.
Which I think is like $260,000 a year for all retirees. Which, again, hopefully
we-
someday we can drop from our OPEB when we're fully funded.
Do we anticipate any retirees this year?
We had one,
It's already in the budget,
yes, yeah,
because that would be an ad
right, right.
whenever that happens, in theory. So, I guess the 440, I mean, I get what you were saying, it's got four full plans of, buffer, and we know the hiring environment, and we know we're not, we're already 3 months into the fiscal year. We also don't want to make it so tight this year that 2.5 doesn't keep us funded in coming years. And I don't know that the school's going to be successful at hiring 9 to 10, 11 with non-benefited employees this year. I'm
Right.
not saying that we won't, but I don't know if we'd be
Right.
able to, right? So
I'm
all of
comfortable-
that
I'm
in, where do you want
I'm
your?
comfortable with the 440, I would not want to go any higher than 440.
I
No,
guess
that
I'm
was-
saying, do you want to go that high?
Right, that was, to me, talking about how many we can actually hire and
Right.
get there this year, I was thinking the full 440 is a little excessive.
Yeah.
I don't think we'd actually
I don't-
fill all those positions.
I don't think so either.
Not within this fiscal year.
I don't either.
But also not cutting it so short that we can't get them in FY '25, staying within a 2.5% increase.
Well, and I guess I keep hearing this fiscal year.
Correct.
To me, we're doing this for the next 5 fiscal years. If we're asking for an override, we're not asking it for just for FY '24. So,
But
If
that
we-
capacity will be built into the next year, right? I'm sorry, I didn't mean to interrupt you.
no, that's totally fine. In theory,
Right,
So-
what Deb's saying is if we don't hit that, say, 400 to 440,000, if we come in and say, we think we'll only hire X amount this year, so let's drop it down to 325, because we're not gonna hire all those anyways, then next year, when they do have more capacity to hire more positions, we're then asking for that budget to jump up by
Right.
whatever we decided to pull back this year. If we know these are positions that we want to have, whether we can fill them in FY '24 or FY '25, we know that the services that we want to offer through the school, through the town departments, would cost this much if we were able to hire everybody this year. I think we plan for it. If it's not there this year, and then we have to wait until the next fiscal year to hire them because of whatever circumstances, the pool wasn't there to get them hired, that's fine, but we're not coming back next year going, where do we find the money for benefits? Which is what we're doing right now. We don't have the money for benefits.
I would be comfortable with 400, taking 2 with buffers off.
Just knowing that we, yeah, could,
2.5%
And then we
next.
build those 2 in the following year.
I was gonna say, I did 2.5% with the 400 added. Next year would bring us another 42, so almost the 2 full again.
that we didn't get this year,
With
yeah.
standard, max levy
It's
increase.
funny, because I put
So-
400 on my line here. I think I was right around the same thing.
The other thing is, we're assuming 20 at full. Some could be partial, some could be
Correct.
none, so I think hedging a little there is not as risky as it sounds, even in FY '25 or '26 if everyone
Correct.
got hired.
Correct.
right? And I don't know what our ratio is of employees, you know, is 70% took benefits, 80% took some level of benefits, I don't know, but it's not 100, right? We have people who
Right, that's
don't
what I was
take it,
asking.
so I think I heard that, yeah, okay.
Yeah, it's
So
not.
400 were kind of on?
Yeah, no, I
Yeah.
think we're all kind of gravitating towards that number.
Yep.
So,
Okay. That's a big number.
Just add them all up, and we have 69 full-time employees, and I added up for the health insurance, 64 of them are exercising their benefits, so we're 5 that don't take them.
So 1 out of 20 maybe?
Yeah.
Okay, oh, that buffer just shrunk.
So 92% are taking benefit. Must be good benefits.
They are.
Great reason to work here.
Exactly.
Absolutely. So it's about 1 in 10, 1 in 12, so, you know, I think we have 1 to 2 of hopefully.
Retention feature. We have great.
I think that covered everything but capital, right? And so, since you're here and we, you know, driver just came up in that, there's nothing else right now. I mean, you already, and I hope that there's a lot there now and that's not an issue, but I'm still asked the question. School is, right now with everything changing, planning, hopefully cutting things with changing how we do transportation, whatever. We're good. At the number you have right now? You hope? For the next 5 years? No.
Yes, we do not anticipate any fiscal,
Fiscal '24.
okay. We do not anticipate any further needs for,
And,
go ahead.
I'm sorry.
No, I was gonna say, I mean, in fact, assuming we get the van on board, and it sounds like we're moving in that direction fairly quickly, we'll recoup that line, although that line is not wholly, for that, we'll recoup a good chunk of that money by having the van in service.
Which offsets getting the program and paying people and the whole thing, right?
Yeah.
Make it nets, okay.
Yeah,
And then to what you said, beyond FY '24, I think the general principles, correct me if I'm wrong, would be that sustainable at no more than 2.5% increases year after year at the moment, best we can tell for the next 5.
I mean, the only one that I potentially, that could potentially, no, let me start again. The only thing that I know is that the adjustment counselor is paid out of a grant, which will end soon. And then if we choose to keep that employee, they would have to be rolled into the budget. So you were talking, you know, a teacher salary of a fairly, I don't know what they're paid, but I'm assuming they're paid fairly high on the salary schedule. Other than that, I do not anticipate, I do not know of any other, you know, large expense at this point.
And just ballpark, I think, after grants and things, it's north of 4 million for this current. That after, you know, without grants included, I think the budget, the raise and appropriate budget somewhere around 4 million, give or take.
Yeah, I
Which-
mean, I can pull it out.
For the elementary school?
Yes, just the elementary. And that's okay, you don't have to be, I was just gonna put this
Yeah,
out
it's
there
just
to
a
say,
ballpark.
2.5 on that is about $100,000. So, you know, for the next few years, do you think 100 more each year is more than, hopefully more than enough capacity? Unexpected aside, you know, unexpected special ed, whatever, but right now, with what you know today.
Right, so a person, you know, again, depending on where they are in the salary schedule, could be anywhere between 60 and 80. So, you know, it takes up a good chunk of that. And then, you know, there's just, unfortunately, it's just the special ed unknown, right? So I can say to you, yes, but then if next year a family moves in or circumstances change, I just feel like we always just have to have kind of that little asterisk there that, what we know right now of the population we have right now, I don't anticipate, unless anybody feels differently, I don't anticipate that being unreasonable. But we are a business where we cannot say no, so if somebody moves in or something changes, we have to adapt to it.
I think we all feel the special needs impacts and understand the,
But we're also.
we have to react to them, but unfortunately don't always, we're not gonna know.
Right, but we also are putting in that special education reserve fund.
Right.
So that is hopefully going to buffer that if we do end up needing it, assuming we have a little bit of time to build some money into that account. So that we use that first. We use our circuit breaker money. We use all those little bits and pieces before we have to come back to the town for any more amount of money. So the hope is that, given a couple of years to build that up, that would help defer any costs for these unexpected special ed costs that come up.
Speaking of that, and we have that language in the planned STM, I think, has this school committee talked about a plan on how they would start funding that?
So you're allowed up to 2% of your net operating budget can go into it. So I anticipate that as we move into the spring and we get good numbers as to whether we have circuit breaker money, what circuit breaker money we have, or what extra money we have in the budget that we don't foresee using, that would slide into that fund. That's how we would fund that. And we can go up to 2% of our net.
So on unexpended operating budget?
Yep.
In theory, if there was excess, would
Yep,
be looking to put that there first?
yep.
Okay.
And at any given moment, that account can't exceed 2% of whatever your current net operating? Or is that
Nope.
an annual appropriation that you can put in?
Annual appropriation can't be more than 2%. Correct me if I'm wrong, but I believe that's how it's
The
worded.
fund has a ceiling of 2% of the the most recent year's operating budget. So
Prior
to
full.
seed it the first year, yes, you could put 2% of your net operating budget in there, but unless it's spent down, the
Right.
next year you'd only be able to put in the difference to get to the next ceiling, which is 2% off the next budget.
Oh, yeah, okay.
Yep.
Yeah, it's not a cap of 2%. It's, like you can't have,
Yes.
yeah,
Yeah. I
you
can-
and I, yes.
This year, it's 2% of 4 million, say, next year it could be 2% of 4.1 million. It's not gonna be much more if you fully funded it, but
Right,
but
yeah.
it
Right.
can go up slightly.
Right.
Okay. It's not
It
gonna
would
be.
be the same as
It's not gonna be
our-
4% now.
It would be the same as what we
In
were talking
total.
about, if you expended down 20,000 of
grant,
it,
yeah.
and with the, with the 2% of whatever your budget is, you're only backfilling what you spend,
backfill it.
Yeah.
plus whatever your new
Yeah.
estimated growth is
That's correct.
based on your
Exactly.
new budget and 2% of
And the
that.
school
Right.
committee can transfer that money in at the end of the year,
Right.
so after they've encumbered everything to get through the summer.
Yeah, so annually, you could look at your budget before it goes back to the town.
Exactly.
Just max that out at the 2% of whatever your current
Yep,
operating budget is.
that's,
the
Okay,
plan.
fair
that's
enough.
the hope.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And because it's basically a revolving account, we just, that's what's so nice about it.
Yeah.
We can just let it sit there.
I mean, in theory, 200,000, it would have absorbed quite a bit of the sticker shock that we had to, deal with this year.
Yep,
So have it-
80,000,
Eight-
2% of the total.
2% of-
Now, I'm not sure if it's total school, not just elementary, I believe, so it's higher than that. Maybe it's
Okay.
2% of 6
It's your,
or
it's your
5. something.
secondary and education, in elementary education.
Oh, you can
budgets.
do both.
is it mixed together? Okay.
Because you're.
So it's 5,
The
Is-
5 of you are responsible for
Yeah,
education.
that would make sense, you're right, yeah,
Yep.
so it's about 5
So it's
million.
around 100,000
yeah.
currently.
It's
Yeah.
about 5 million.
Which is why
Yeah.
we're hoping to build it for a
Right.
couple of years
If you
before
get
we
year
need
1,
it.
year 2, and,
Exactly,
Yeah, but I think to what you were saying, I just want to caution, even if it's 105 or 110 in a few years, that's unfortunately only like 30% of what we
Yeah.
just experienced.
sure, but
In-
then,
in a single
but then we
year,
also
but
have
it's
circuit
something.
breaker, we also have, there
Sure.
are little bits and pieces other places.
Mm-hmm.
The point is just to try and be as self-sufficient as possible, to
Yep.
not have to come to the town, or to come to the town with a significantly smaller amount to ask for.
Right.
Yeah.
We're trying to,
Level that out a little. I
Yep.
totally get it.
yep.
Anything else outside of capital that has come up? Anything that we missed that anyone can think of that hasn't gone through this exercise yet? Got all the feedback? we could, maybe not all we wanted, but all we could. So capital. And I will let Ben take it here in a second, but, you know, the group met and overall came out with what we've been spending, right, is about, you know, it's north of $1 million almost every year in capital expenses. Funded partially by free cash, partially by raise and appropriate. We, in theory, have budgeted so tight there is no free cash, right? Because we're short. So the idea that we can count on that, I think, going forward is not real. And currently, the FY24 budget carries 0 capacity for capital. And then you want to get into more of how that number, what that number is meant to do and things like that? Or-
Sure.
Okay.
What we've got here is $1.195 million, but what it's actually going to be is $1.250 million. We subtracted the 50 and the 55. And, I mean, just the, I'm sorry, the 5, not the 50. What we're looking at is setting a threshold of $750,000 that we don't want to go above, but with a buffer of 250 in case something comes up that we have to spend the money for. Also building on top of that, a $250,000 revolving fund for, we need to buy police cars every X amount of years. We need to buy a fire truck every certain amount of years, because what we can't do is we can't have, shouldn't have a budget that is just year to year, because we can't build any 25-year planning or even 5-year planning into it. So we looked at those 3 levels of, this is where we want to stop at 750. If we have to go above it, we can go that 250 above it, and 250 going away for things that we need to schedule to purchase. Does that make any sense, or? Okay.
And I think buildings, $1 million fire trucks, those are not something that the capacity is there on a one-time annual basis, right? So how do we bridge those? The same as the revolving you were just talking about. How do we try to bridge that over long term? I think the one thing, and it's a, you know, it's a shocking number, right? It sounds like a lot, and we have a lot of data, and we're finishing kind of making sure. I think in our next capital meeting we'll be discussing it again, of what have we actually done over the last 5 or 6 years, and have that clarity. Where did it come from, and how much was it for all those years? The other piece is, as I've said on this, we haven't talked about this at all. It's just a question about that 125 is assuming we have no funding from free cash, because this is always an appropriate capacity, which in theory is where we are today.
Right.
We have no free cash capacity. We might have something from last year that we'll see in the spring, but in theory in FY25 there would be none being cashed out. But if we do an override, then hopefully we've built some of that financial policy of having being in the 3 to 5% excess every year in our budget back, should we anticipate that there is some, and bring that down accordingly. And I just asked the question, and, you know, not that we have the answer tonight, but I don't know. If this total, you know, just in theory, the override passed in full, now we've increased that overall operating budget, I would assume in theory we've put back some of the buffers across the departments, which helps bridge unexpected, but also ends up allowing some amount of excess to roll into free cash. I look at it 2 ways. We can do this the way it is and raise it this level, and then in FY probably 26 budget, because you probably don't want to do it in 25 because we don't know for sure what that's going to look like coming out of 24. We can just not max out the levy if we find that the free cash is resumed to be at a larger level, because we do this now when we do FY25. If we have 500 of free cash, we can choose to use that to offset the capital and not spend it all out of R&A and not max out the tax levy, which brings us back down some from the override over the multi-year. or we can hedge and reduce what we ask now. I don't know, but I just wanted to put it out there as a question.
Yeah, it makes sense, and I know at least on the capital committee that even though we're talking $750,000 or $1 million, we get considerably more than that for requests every year. So we have to trim that down to what we can afford in a year, so it's not like, well, sign the check, give everybody everything. We have to trim this down. And we're also looking at, we've been talking amongst ourselves of ways that we can get all the department heads together and maybe talk about all of the capital expenditures at one time so that everybody can see the whole list of capital expenditures and say, where does mine fall into this list? It's number one priority for me, but for the town, it may be like number 30. So, I mean, it'll give everybody a little taste of what we look at with capital planning and maybe an ability to say, yeah, it's important, but it's not important this year. We'd like to put it on the list for subsequent years.
I think that's a great perspective to give everybody, so that they can see what everybody else is asking for and kind of, yeah.
I'll ask it because I know it's been a constant thread. It's not to maybe get the answer, but at some point, because it's probably in the weeds a little bit, like the roof, the HVAC, the stuff at the school, it's like kind of going to be probably major cost pieces if there's not grants that we can successfully get. Understanding that better, right, is important too to capital. I know it's been discussed a few times, so if you have any more information or clarity or where, I think that's something that they're looking to get, or I say we, I'm on it too, are looking to get. So not looking for an answer right now, unless you have something you want to share, but.
Well, I'll just share that it is on our agenda for our next school committee meeting, which is next Tuesday. So it's on there. We're expecting some information because
Okay.
it's, and then we're also looking at some of the things that we've had on the capital planning plan.
Capital plan.
Doesn't sound right.
Capital plan.
Yeah. That we have not expended and whether we're really going to be following through on those projects or not. So I do anticipate, and I don't want to speak for the board, but I personally do anticipate that we will have some things that we, make the decision that we're not going to move forward with. That's not going to get us to $750,000, but,
I'm gonna write that down.
we'll do our best.
I think the playground is another big area that will come up very soon.
Yeah.
It's very
That is true.
dated, it's dating itself. There's a lot of areas where there's things that are missing or broken, or the pavement's uneven, or the squishy, ground is not
Isn't.
so great anymore. So I think if we were looking at like the top 3, at least when I was briefly looking at the list, it was like the roof, HVAC, and the playground, which are gonna be pretty costly.
Yeah.
So I guess I would ask, as someone who's been on capital, you guys have a capital committee? What is that? What do they do? Because speaking for capital, we had no idea. So
You had no idea what?
that you guys have your own capital committee?
We don't.
We don't.
Okay, so that's just a holdover on the agenda?
It's
It's gonna be on the agenda for this time.
yeah.
Okay,
So
okay.
far, it's just a name.
Okay.
There's no actual bodies.
Right,
Okay.
You are?
your latest agenda though has the creation of one, correct?
Correct.
Is that your next meeting?
I
You
mean,
have
I
to-
was just reporting on all of the projects that we've been doing, just because I've been working with the school and procuring different projects, so that's what I was providing the update. But I never met with anybody or,
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
I was just giving updates.
Well, thank you for
And I-
volunteering, all of you.
I would say, I know there's a little, at least for myself, there's a little confusion. I might be completely misremembering this, but I swore earlier in the year, Caitlin had said you guys had been awarded the $100,000 HVAC exploratory grant, but then at the last meeting, she said you were not.
Yeah.
That's kind of one of those things that's gonna be a massive expense, that as far as we're concerned, we really don't know. We finally got a capital request form, but that's the kind of stuff like we have to know about because it's a major thing.
Sure.
And so if we don't know about it, we're not budgeting it, we're not putting it on the plan, you guys are gonna come ask for it, and we're gonna go, we don't know what you're talking about. So I don't know if there's just a way that, I know you guys are in a transition year right now with the principal and all that kind of stuff. But some sort of better plan. In the past, they've kind of been a little all over the place. We are gonna enact a new policy where you guys will have to sign off on the capital requests, which has not been done, in the past, and that's not just your board, that's gonna be for everybody. So maybe that will help with some of that kind of stuff, but yeah, just having a little bit better of a plan would be
Yeah.
fantastic.
Yeah, I think we
think
all
we all
agree.
agree.
Yes. Yep.
We'll make
Yeah.
it so.
I know my
quote Chief
feedback,
Wonka.
yeah, my feedback at the last meeting, I had some concern with the 1.25, and by the end of our conversation, I had gotten there, because you really look at all those, all of the bigger projects, the larger expenditures. I wasn't even thinking of the school with the HVAC and the roof, and, because I had concern with the just-in-case line of $250,000 on capital, like where our target is 750, but we may spend up to $1 million every year, and I thought, that's a big buffer. And then I realized the cost of some of these things is well over $1 million per item. So, it's, you could eat up that 250,000 just in case very quickly, and still be at a deficit if you're not careful. So, the sticker shock wore off pretty quickly after we started discussing it.
And during the capital meetings, one of the pieces that we didn't just identify, don't think yet, that I was advocating about was, for the last handful of years, we've been paying ourselves back for the library at $273,000 a year. That would have been a debt service had we done a borrowing instead. Arch Street debt services, actually, you probably know it better than him.
60,000 a year,
60?
it's about 60.
Principal and interest?
I thought it was 100.
Thought it was 100 or
Yeah,
100 plus. Okay.
I don't have the debt service.
Anyway, it's six figures. I think it's at least 100. The idea that there's capacity in there for debt service for a capital expenditure. So maybe that 250 ends up becoming debt services for capital investments because we had to borrow to do some of the bigger things. We still have to pay for it somehow. So that 1.25 is trying to capture those potentials too. But we may have to carry debt service. New Public Works building. Town Hall hasn't even tried to get back to that situation. School, I mean, there's all of them, right? The really big ones. They're never going to be a one-year budget.
Well, and some of it, too, part of the concern to some degree is just the strategic planning. Like the school, for example, with you guys for the HVAC, quite some time ago, way back in the beginning, I believe it was when Jim was still here, the roof needed to get done, the skylights needed to get done, and the HVAC needs to get done, which sits on your roof, which, so it's how do you strategically plan those things out? We may not necessarily be able to afford to do it in one giant project, which would probably be the most optimal, but just, trying to budget-wise,
Yeah.
we don't want to have new HVAC go up on a cruddy roof.
Right.
So it's just how do you kind of plan that chain of events out?
Yep.
And what's most important today and what is most optimal doesn't create rework, aren't always the same thing. But, so I was just advocating for, maybe considering reducing the 125 from an RNA standpoint under assumption that we might have some free cash, or at least communicating that we would think about that in future years if the free cash became available to not max the levy, increase every year. None of this takes into account putting anything into general stabilization, though. And I just want to make sure that's in front of all of us. We used to put a fair amount of free cash in every year. Sometimes it was $200,000, $300,000, $400,000 into general stabilization. We even were still doing that some when we had capital stabilization become a thing we started to try to build. Not that there's much in there today yet, but I just want to kind of identify that we aren't doing that anymore either.
So,
So-
sorry.
No, you're fine, go ahead.
And so I just want to just circle back for a minute to this special education fund that we're setting up, because that will also defer or
Divert free cash?
divert some of that free cash, right?
a good point.
Right, so generally, the school has an amount that we give back. If we're going to fund this special fund, a good chunk of that's going to be going there. So just kind of keep that,
At least-
calculation.
At least until it's funded or expended.
Right.
And
Yeah,
yeah, okay.
Jim?
Anyhow, Yeah.
Yeah, no, I was just going to say, I didn't want to speak over anybody, but going back to the HVAC system, whether it through a school capital or through capital over here or whatnot, I encourage people to look at what funding sources there are. I know right now, there's a few different utility companies that are offering very aggressive compensation packages for green energy going into building automation systems and whatnot. One particular local energy supplier will pay up to 90% of certain funded projects, and I don't know where we would qualify as a municipality for any of that, but I would encourage you to dig deeply and find what we could get.
Yeah, I actually had a conversation with Jason Jamrog, and he gave me a number for a contact for commercial rebates. So I'm gonna go ahead and give that to Caitlin, so that she has that contact.
Okay. I think if Mariah has a lot of connections now, you know, in her role with different opportunities, so you may loop her in if she can give some assistance too.
Maybe it's something the new assistant could work on.
There's a lot in that list to work on.
Earn that 65K back right
And I
away.
know, well, a while ago, they were talking about solar at some point, but
Right.
then it was when they investigated the roof was so
The
bad,
roof.
you're not gonna put solar on the roof, and then that's how we got back to where we are now. So I know it's
Right.
been like years that
Yep.
this has been in the works and conversation.
It was pre-Caitlin, just because I
Yes.
know it was your last business manager.
yeah.
Who
Sure,
had
yeah.
started that, there was a grant that the school had gone for, and then I guess part of the roof wasn't old enough, but the other part was, so it wasn't awarded.
Right.
So yeah, it's,
Rapid, it was through the school building authority, it was a rapid renovation and upgrade program for roofs specifically.
Yep, no, that was through Bruce, because we had
Yeah,
the
so
solar
it's
person come
been-
out, they were doing a whole presentation, and everybody was like, what about the roof? And that squashed that.
So go back to my question, maybe the answer is we're good with where it is, but 125, is that the number still?
So, yeah.
I agree.
I think it stays 125, but Ben had suggested last week that we can review it in the future, and I think that's what the committee, I mean, obviously we have to discuss it, but we've done it in the past, I think, saying like, we'll review it in 3 years, and making sure that it's still an appropriate amount, and if it's not, we can change it as need be.
Well, and I think on an annualized basis, as capital's reviewing all the projects, doing the recommendations, that 125 is a big number in this effort today for an override, but in FY '25, when we do our annual process, it's going to be a list of improvements
Yeah.
that is recommended. It's going to be a deposit into capital stabilization of some amount. And if that's less than the 125, a recommendation not to do anything else with that extra capacity or to increase something, right?
Yeah.
So I think that's going to be an every year thing, right, really? Or did you mean like what the tiers are and what we're trying to do with the breakdown or?
No, we would look at it every, like, obviously annually we review everything. But at the 3-year mark, once we've gotten past and we've put a couple fiscal years under our belt, we can really kind of hone in and go, okay, this is what we've done in the last 3 years since this money was approved, hopefully. And we're finding that, you know what, we're really coming in closer to $1 million every year and we don't need that extra. So let's go ahead and change that and that can get taken out of here and, you know, be used elsewhere.
Got it. Okay. So, since a few of us are doing it in Excel, the new number is 2.156. Which is a big number.
What is the number again?
I have 2.156 million. Am I off? Somebody else have something different?
That's not closer than I had.
I have
I have 2.332.
22175.
Oh, we're going to miss.
17 positions, 16, no. Do you guys have them broken by the omnibus, like Gen Gov, Public Safety, do you have them subtotaled? Because I can run down through what I have and we can see where there's discrepancies.
I have 220 for general government,
Same,
125 for public safety,
same.
Yeah,
92 public works,
yeah,
39 wastewater,
yeah.
5,000
So-
health and
Hang on a second. No, sorry, are you guys with us?
Yeah, no, we were trying to find out where my arrow was.
Okay, well, I was hearing different numbers and trying to listen, so, okay. We were at Public Works, I think, when I lost track.
92,
Yep,
39,000 wastewater, 5,000 for health and human, 25,000 for culture and rec, 400,000 benefits, and 1.25 capital.
Okay,
So-
so that's not the 50 for road work or the 5 for bridge, it's just 1.25 flat?
It's inclusive of.
It's inclusive of,
it's 55, it's 50, 5,000, and 1.195
Yep.
in other.
That's,
That's what you don't have. You don't have the reduction. So the 5 and
Yeah.
the 50 were subtracted from the 250 because it's all part of the 1,250.
got it.
And I think you noted there's more than that though earlier.
for,
There's more capital things that we were proposing to put back in for departments than just the 50 and the 5. Is that right? Did you say that earlier?
no, I don't think so.
No? Okay.
I only have the 50 and the
Hearing
5.
things? It's totally possible.
I thought there was a 30,000. I thought I heard somebody say something additional as well.
Oh, it was the grant match funding, which was, it's not operating, oh, but it's not capital, it's finance. Sorry, that's where my head was. Okay, I'm good.
I didn't know that was being taken out of the capital though.
It's not.
Okay, okay.
There was a point where I thought it belonged in capital.
Okay.
Because it's usually grant funds for
Yep.
capital projects. So we have a number, and I think at this point, at least many of us have slept on it a few different times, and it
Do we have,
just gets bigger, so let's stop here. No. Do we have a what?
do we have an
Sorry.
agreement on the number?
I mean, that's my next question. Does everybody here, I don't think anybody likes it. Let's just be real about it, right? It's all our bills, but.
I just meant math-wise, so we all
Yeah.
understand.
Oh. Okay.
We were at 6 different numbers, I think, at one point. Like,
I
I was
think
gonna ask you to repeat where we got that to.
it's a really good point. I'm sorry, I moved on. It's 2.156. Yeah.
you're philosophical, we're like, no, what's
Yeah,
the
really.
number?
I'm like, I already got the number. It's right here.
2.156.
156, 156,
I
156.
have 2, 1, 5, 7, 8, but I can go to 1, 5,
All right, 156 it is.
Somebody replace his calculator with a good one.
Yeah.
this is the right.
Anybody else who was doing it have any issue with 2.156?
I got 21625, but we changed the library to 25,000, right?
Yeah,
Yep.
but we didn't add the 18. We just went
Right,
25.
Right.
So Gen Gov was 220. Public Safety was 125. Public Works 92.
According to Excel, that's what they add up to.
Wastewater 39. Health and Human Services 5. Culture and Rec 25. Health Insurance 400. And Capital Improvement total 1.25.
Did you say general government, it was the same number, 2265?
220. Gen Government total, I have 220,000 even.
Oh, we took out the trip.
We took
Yeah,
out
we
the
took out the
6,500 for
6,500.
elections. We took it out as a
Okay.
one-time
Yep.
with capacity.
I see.
And that's probably,
That's where it is.
that's where it is, right? Okay.
Yep.
And I'm not going to find your 1,800 or whatever that number was.
2156, yeah.
Yep.
1,800 sounds like adding the
Library.
library.
I made up the 1,800, but I think it is the number.
Adding in the
So
library.
now
Same
you may
as
wax
you, and I was like-
philosophical, now that we're all on the same page
Yes.
about the number.
I'll live with his number. It's a big number either way.
I know.
But
Yeah.
now, no, we're good. I also had the 65 still sitting there.
Okay. That makes a lot of sense. Yeah. Yeah, that's, yeah. So back to the philosophical question. None of us like this, right? No one here wants to raise our levy at all, and especially not by a large number. But does it,
Can I just throw something out there? Because
is it going to change the number?
it is, but somebody just walked in that made the light bulb go off.
Hi, Jackie.
Welcome to the meeting, Jackie.
What a grand entrance.
It's the first time that you've come up, is right now.
One of the things that was mentioned along the same vein of the library that we actually haven't discussed is that someone is under the impression they might retire. And she brought up a good point in her memo that her department does not have a backup or if the assessor is out, there is not someone there. And so there was a proposal to potentially add an assistant to that office as well. And so that is something that we have not talked about or factored in any way.
Yep.
So I know we're trying to
I
be as
guess I
thorough
would-
as we can, so.
I guess I would say of not, and not to ignore the fact that you're here, but we have not had or heard that I'm aware of, and again, I didn't have the library memo in front of me and missed some things there, so maybe I missed them, but I don't believe we've seen anything from the Board of Assessors to say, you know, we think that in the 1 year or 5 year plan, we need some more capacity to have a position filled. I don't think we've heard any of that.
I believe it was
Officially.
the request to have a meeting to have a discussion about that. And so I don't know if that had taken place or anything like that. So I'm just throwing it out there. It was put forth and it's something that we haven't discussed. And we are trying to, I mean, we're literally trying to count every penny at this point. So it's
Totally
just,
true.
it's just something that's out there.
So, Jackie, since you're here, if you know more about that in the board's discussions, if you would be willing to come up and share, that would be great.
Hello. I did put it in writing the day that I came in.
If you don't mind.
Nope, not at all.
You know what? Sorry.
They won't mind.
I knew this was gonna happen.
Oh, you're like teacher and mom put together. That's even worse.
Can you hear me now?
Okay, yeah, thank you.
So I did, it was brought forth in writing when we came before the board at the meeting regarding the potential for the $125,000 back for this year. And then in fiscal year '25, it was mentioned that the Board of Assessors were exploring the possibility. I will say that we had already had an assistant in the budget for '24, which we removed for my pending retirement, and yes, I am eventually going to retire in like 2 years, 2.5 years. So it wasn't like the position wasn't there, but prior to that, we were thinking of me training someone to replace me, but out of that evolved the fact that it's really not good business practice to have a single person in an office like the assessors. If something happens, I win the lottery, I did not win Mega Millions or anything like that, that the town would be in dire straits because there's no one to backfill on any of the things that goes on in the assessor's office. So it was put in writing, and I was going to save it for the fiscal '25 discussion, but we can certainly discuss it now. It would probably be along the lines of what was budgeted prior for the assistant assessor position. That was at 20 hours, though. Oh, no, I believe it was at 20 hours because we were including benefits. The position that we had briefly talked about a few meetings ago wasn't going to be benefited. I was proposing perhaps a 10 to 15-hour position with the possibility that person might actually step into the position in the 2 years before I retired. So if you're looking for a ballpark figure, the high end would be I think the 40,000, no, I make 40,000. The 20-something or the 30,000 from the budget, it's not on the top of my brain, so I need a little refresher.
I just
So,
dug up, I'm sorry.
If we're looking, I think we've talked in different things, at 5 years, and Jackie retires, and be,
2.
I'm saying, since, I heard 5.
At some point in the next 5.
What we were prior to your arrival, we were talking about setting this override number, projecting for 3 years, 5 years and beyond, and we already tackled, chewed on the health insurance number and contingencies, and one thing about was retirees. So if Jackie does retire in 6 years, 2 years, you become an additional number on the retirees. So does this add to staff, even if it's 15 hours now and maybe a $25,000 position? Do we have to add more capacity on that health insurance line to account for Jackie's eventual retirement?
Well, I will be retiring. You will have another person in the position. I guess the question comes, do you wish to have 2 people in the office, one that could be benefited or not benefited? You would have to have one who is benefited. I don't believe that you would get a qualified assistant assessor or principal assessor without the benefits.
Well, the part that I mentioned is, in the health insurance number that we were tackling, we also have to consider, so we hire a new principal assessor, that would be a benefited position, but there's a very strong possibility that when you eventually retire in 10 years,
I hope my husband's not watching.
no, there's a likelihood you will take advantage of benefits, or any person currently in a position will take advantage of.
Well, I can personally tell you, yes, I will be taking advantage of those
so
benefits, but
We're
yes.
not asking, but thank you for
Yes,
sharing.
it's okay.
No, I'm just looking at the
capacity.
discussion we've
Yes.
had,
Yep.
and again.
It does have an impact, and that's why I was trying to bring it up for the potential for 25, was that there would still be an impact on that, so yes.
I get your point. I want
I
Jen's
also-
thoughts, but I have
bringing
thoughts.
something else up,
Oh,
so
no.
thinking more and more about the health insurance, the POTW, their insurance is paid out of their fund, so I could actually back that amount down 60,000. Right?
Oh, wastewater waters
Wastewater
benefits are
Comes
paid
out of
out
the
of their
what,
enterprise
enterprise?
fund, not out of the benefits line?
Right.
Is that accurate?
I didn't have that response because that was new information to me, but that was,
Sorry.
I'm realizing that wasn't on your spreadsheet.
No, it wasn't, because I'm like thinking about it, I'm like, okay, just kind of a huge total, and I just want to make sure that I have my numbers right, and going back to, I just pulled up one of our bill schedules, and, yeah, the PFPW has their own separate line, and that gets paid out of that line.
So assuming that we use the spreadsheet that you provided
Right.
everybody, I budgeted 75,000 in POTW, so you can back that down by 75,000.
So the 128 of current spend is less 75.
So we could
Because it will be attributed to the POTW budget.
So you're going to 325?
Or are we starting at 440 and taking it away? And then reevaluating?
Conservative.
No, I get it, I get it.
Well, we have 40 and I'm 400, and you're,
So the difference can go like 330.
Good clarification, thank you.
Yeah.
So
I
we're
like that
down to
direction.
330, but I'm going to propose the number 350 to build the capacity for potential retirees, additional retirees in
I think it's a good middle ground.
I'd be comfortable with that.
the near future.
does it cost more to be a current employee or a retired employee?
So when you go onto MedX, it's much cheaper. So you
the monthly,
The monthly rate is like $300 or $327, but the town pays 77% of that. And if you're on an active plan, you're.
I don't mean the person, I mean the town. Is it cheaper for the town to have an active employee or a retired employee?
Well,
Yeah.
again, it depends though, if they're not eligible for a Medicare, they could be on active plan the rest of their life. And so therefore, it would be more expensive.
I'm just wondering why you're worrying about it because assuming that the current employee takes the health insurance plan now, they would flip to a retirement plan, which sounds like it would be cheaper. So I'm wondering.
But you
But-
still have to fill that position.
But then we
Right,
backfill the
right.
position.
So Jackie's going
Oh, so we
to,
would
she's,
have to
right,
extra.
Jackie's going to
Yeah, yeah.
retire, but still be on our
Yep.
benefits.
Yep, no, I'm.
And then
Yeah.
the person that replaces Jackie,
Yep.
good luck to them replacing Jackie.
We'll need full benefits at least. to
Yeah.
get-
And potentially,
I understand.
I'm not, that's not even funny, I'm not gonna say that.
So a ballpark to what you were getting at, I think, Mackenzie. If we're saying it's shy of 22 for most expensive, if you translate that into a retiree at most expensive, what's that cost difference? Is it a big number or is it a few
We're
$1,000s?
paying less because we pay less for retirees.
Yeah.
We pay 84% for active, and we pay 77% for retirees. So even if they stay on the active plan, they're not on medics yet, we are paying less.
So 7% less
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct.
of
And
84,
then
yeah,
once they
okay,
get, once they
okay,
reach
gotcha.
65, then they move on to medics, and then therefore it's much cheaper.
Okay.
Because-
But at least
because
then,
Medicare kicks in, and then they're just buying a supplemental plan. which would-
and that's where the savings really is. There's probably only a few thousand upfront
Yeah.
till then. Okay, okay. Thank you. 350, you were comfortable with it? Everybody else? Felt like it was reasonable? 2.106? Without the other half of the conversation, which is capacity for an assistant staff or an additional staff member in the assessor's office.
Is it because there's a need for an additional staff member, or you're just trying to create a pathway to, you know, not have as much disruption when one employee retires and
Well, I've been doing this job 25 years, so when I started, one employee was enough because we had outside consultants, and they did the bulk of it, but the job has evolved, and the Department of Revenue also was involved a lot more. So over the years, it's evolved, and now we do everything in-house. So when we began the discussion, when I first broached my retirement, I asked the assessors what they wanted to do. Did they want to replace with what they currently had, or did they want to go back to the old model, and the town wants currently what they have, which is we do everything in-house. So I've been doing this job a long time, and so I have efficiencies built in that I don't believe that a new person could step in and do what I do efficiently because they'd be learning the job. My profession has had a wave of retirees, so there's not a lot of qualified principal assessors in Massachusetts, even in the more populated areas, never mind out in where we are. I believe that I am one of 4 people that have my Massachusetts accredited designation in Western Mass, out of all the towns in Western Mass. So this has led to, I was thinking back, okay, so I replaced me with me, right? One person, I work 25 hours a week with that. Well, what happens if that person doesn't like the job, or it's not for them, or whatever, and they leave? Or they get wooed by another community because they're paying them more, or whatever. That leaves the town in a pickle. And then I've been looking at other models, and recently, even the town of Buckland now has an assessor's clerk and basically a principal assessor, because you want someone to be able to step in if something were to happen to you and to carry some of the workload. The job has gotten more complicated over the years. We are required to do everything now, so I don't mean to meander too much, but it's more looking back at who could do the job the way that it's done now. And I don't believe that, and I'm not like touting my horn or anything like that. I just think it would be very difficult for one person to do it in the way that it's done now. And also, it doesn't behoove the town not to have a backup if something were to happen to that person in the position. The assessor's office is in charge of the valuation part of what we do. So without the assessor setting the value, and that you can't set the tax rate. And that's not even the little stuff like abatements and exemptions and all the other daily stuff, which is what an assessor's clerk would do, but it's just what does a principal assessor do? I hope I'm making some sense. I wasn't prepared to talk about this tonight, so. But does that clarify? I believe that there's enough work in that office to sustain a clerk and a principal assessor. I make it work because I've been doing it a very long time. But somebody new coming in, it's a learning curve. I mean, even if you have your designation and you know what you're doing, it's still a learning curve, and you only do things once a year. And the learning curve is between 3 and 5 years before you're comfortable with everything. So I believe there's enough work in there for 2 people. And I just think it's a better business model, to be honest.
Do you think it's 20 hours worth, or do you think it could be done in 15 hours?
I would suggest 15 hours. You know, I started out, you know, just as in between the time my kids were at school. Like, you know, nobody grows up and say they want to be an assessor, right? You just kind of fall into it and you either love it or hate it. So I think that the clerk part could be done in the 10 or 15 hours. And then in the 2.5 years before my retirement, then we could then look for someone to be a principal assessor, and then they could take the higher stuff. And then we'd still have somebody trained to do the day-to-day. And that's really the important stuff. You could hire out to have someone do your values, but consultants are very expensive. I mean, to have, and there's even a shortage of companies that do that then, but most small towns pay anywhere probably between $20,000 and $30,000 a year to have somebody come in and do what I do, right, with setting the tax rate and the building permits and all of that. Did that answer your question, Mackenzie?
I think so.
Okay, sorry.
And the other piece I heard is, assuming we hire a principal assessor, doesn't have your level of experience, obviously, and doesn't in the town of Erving, period. Even a 40-hour position, we don't have the business continuity of having 2 people who are at less than full-time, so when one changes,
Right.
we don't lose all of that knowledge and continuity.
That is a
That's
big
the
part of
other
it. I mean,
Piece of the formula, right?
it is a piece of the formula. So, and even though Erving is a very small community, we're very unique. We have the hydroelectric facility that gets that gets done. That's a specialty appraisal. We have some mills. We have a nice mix of. We have second homes. We have a nice mix as far as from an assessor's point of view. It's never dull, but hiring somebody at 40 hours wouldn't fix the problem of what to do if that person left the position and didn't come in the next day.
Does that answer questions about the topic? I think then the question is, what is a number if we want to put one in? If we want to put one in, and if so, what is it?
Brian?
Thank you.
I'm going to suggest for a 15-hour position in the interest of business continuity planning, eliminating a single point of failure, and having a built-in transition plan for when Jackie retires. Should I say 15 years?
I think so.
25,000.
I was thinking 30, but yeah. And good job, you already got her up by 6 months, because she started off at 2.
I got to 2.5.
You
Keep
got her to
stretching.
2.5.
Well, we're here for 2.5, right?
Well, I think think we're already stretching, already on the +6 side of that counter, so we'll keep it going. Or 0.5. 120, so we moving to 150 for the budget, 155?
Yeah.
I don't know the numbers
150?
exactly, I think 10
Yep.
to 15 hours was the ballpark, and
What are you thinking of like the starting rate? Because, I mean, even if it's at $25 an hour, that's $20,000 for 15 hours a week.
25 at 15? Is that what you said?
So 25 hours, $25 an hour, 15 hours a week times 52 weeks would be 19.5,
Okay,
so 20,000.
so
20,000.
So 20, not 25?
Yep.
I don't think we're deciding on a rate today, we're just getting close.
No,
I'm just throwing
Building
it out there.
capacity,
Yeah,
no, no, I know, I
thinking
know,
about
I'm
high
teasing.
numbers.
right.
You know what I
No,
mean?
treasurer brain
I'm
has to
teasing
go
you.
right to,
I'm
okay,
teasing
so
you.
get it.
I'm teasing, it's getting late.
So we're gonna move the assessor's total to 145?
That's what I heard.
Okay.
2126.
Yep.
And I take no credit for Brian filling in some gaps in our philosophy here, in my opinion. We,
Oh, there it is, way up there. To 145?
yes. In the FY24 budget, there was other raise and appropriate funding capacity, whatever you want to call it, that we had that I at least wasn't taking into account when I thought about the capital. So I just want to make sure we're thinking about that, which is we really did, I didn't pull the word. We put 150,000 into capital stabilization with raise and appropriate this year. So that capacity exists next year. So I think just off the top, I'd say we should take it down 150. Would you agree? Because
Yeah.
it's in the current budget.
If it's in the current budget and our hope was to put 250, then yeah, we back down to 150.
Okay. And then we had 145,000.
Sorry.
No, you're fine. 145,000 of raise and appropriate capacity that we used to toward the general stabilization payback of the library, which in theory was a capital expense. So that's another 145 in raise and appropriate capacity.
That's currently in there.
That's currently in there, and after this year, the library's paid back, and so that's RNA capital capacity. So I think we can take another 145 off for that, because it's built in.
Was that RNA or was some of that free cash?
So then there was 100 for free cash too. And in theory, I don't know if there's a theory, I don't have one right now. Would that 100 be there in theory again? Probably. Maybe, don't know. That's a free cash one, so it's a question mark for me whether that impacts what we decide or not.
So you're saying take the 1,045,000, or we just knocked down another 145 off of that?
145 or 140, I don't remember.
We took 150 off of it from capital stabilization, RA, and then 145
145.
for library payback, RA. Right? Okay. So I get down to 955 total for capital?
Yep.
Okay. And that's for what we need to adjust the budget. That still gives us the 1.25 in RA capacity next year.
Which puts us back to around the total that was
It's
projected.
almost the same number.
1.83, which is what the projections were that we asked Jackie to work on.
After all that, how did we even,
Yeah, I mean, it's just, you
that
know,
is a hat trick right
when
there.
when it's all said and done, that's what it was built on, was around the 1.8. 1813, and we're
Are you
1831.
trying to say we spent 2.5 hours getting
We
back
could
to
have
where
done
we
it in
started?
15 minutes, I told you.
We could have just used this one document and said it was accurate.
However, I do want to list one other one that I don't think we really talked about. And I believe we all agreed that it made sense long-term, but it was a decision because of the shortage this year, OPEB. We used to put $300,000 every year into OPEB, to moving towards finally fully funding that. So then that benefit cost drops off. We dropped it to 100. We got numbers on when we'd be fully funded and how far away we were and all that. We made the decision we were good for it with that for FY24. I think we generally, I feel like I remember, thought that that was probably the right answer for a while because we're getting there.
Yeah.
But is that how we all feel?
I can only speak for myself. I'm fine with keeping it at 100 if it means the extra 6, 7, 8 years it would take to be fully funded. I think we're one of probably one community in the area that's getting as close as we are. One of one. I don't think there's anybody else coming even close. And I don't think it's puts us in any predicament by slowing down our investment into OPEB and just elongating how long it takes to get there. We'll get there eventually.
Right, yeah, it did say the alternatives would push the date back between 3 to 7 years.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yep.
Okay. All right. I just want to make sure we
Yeah.
touched on it. I agree. I think we've talked about a lot of ways where we're extending how we're stabilizing in all different ways, and this is one of them too. And that hopefully in the long run it actually starts saving us money at some point. So,
Right.
okay. All right. Then I'm not changing that again. I don't believe there's any other RNA in our already approved FY24 budget that changes anything we did here. The only other piece was wages, but that's real and that's in the operating cost now.
Correct.
It will be moved in and it exists, so that is not
Correct.
capacity.
It's not-
That is
yeah.
consumed. So 1831?
1831 instead of the projections, thank you, Jackie, was using 1.813, so it's very close.
Very close.
Although, when Miss Boyden did join us, she did say that she had another request that would have changed our number, so, did you not?
No,
Did I mishear you? Oh, okay, great, I misheard you. Perfect.
no.
That's perfect.
I actually only came to see if you had questions on the spreadsheet. Didn't know I was going to talk about it.
Well, we're just about
So-
there.
Right?
Perfect timing. We're about to talk about it.
And we're all the way back to that number again. So philosophically, I think we're at, so I got 1831. Philosophically, do we all believe or feel that support that this is the right decision to present to the voters?
And so you're asking the school committee for
I'm
that
asking
same?
everybody at the table.
Yes.
I'm
Like-
in support of this.
You know, I ask that, totally respect people if you don't feel that way or agree we need it and don't agree that we should spend it.
it's-
It's fine, but I also know that we need to help communicate this to all of the constituents about what does that mean and why is it important? Because when the second we talk about the tax levy change, and we're probably going to get questions about what about the potential IP mill demo, override or debt exclusion, which this group, we should have filled in on that, said this is more important this year, so we're pushing that to next year at this point.
I think it's important to put these placeholders in place so that we can remain that level of service that we have been giving in the past, like your letter refers to. And without that, I just feel like we're just gonna have to keep pulling back in future years if that capacity isn't there.
And I appreciate the holistic approach so that we can assist the departments as needed and not one department over another and causing more chaos within the town. So I think that's where, at first, when all that conversation was going on, it was like, oh, what are we getting ourselves into? But as we've stepped back and really looked at this holistically and how it affects the whole town and all the departments and everyone here in Erving, that has, really made it feel like it's a true benefit for everyone, whether you're for this department or that department, or you're older or younger, or have kids or don't have kids. Like, this is going to affect you somehow, and you're going to benefit from it. So I appreciate that.
I was just going to circle back to a comment you made. This is a big number, and I don't think any of us are really excited to say we, are proposing to raise your taxes. But this is the number, and this is why. If we have grown to expect certain levels of service in this town, and if we want to maintain them, this is the reality of the situation we're in. And I think we've put in a lot of work. We didn't just grab 1.831 out of the sky. We've hashed this over, we've put a lot of work into it, and it's a big number, but it's the number.
Okay. So we have, for example, the draft letter of support here that you put together, Scott.
Yep.
And I haven't had a chance to read through it, but, you know, I guess I would say if any of the, boards, committees want to do something similar, do we want to, put out those kind of messages to the public, as these, elected bodies to, share our viewpoints on why we're doing this, right? And why it makes sense, or not. I'm not saying anybody has to, right? This one
Right.
would be from the board. But I would encourage and appreciate everyone trying to help explain the detail behind it and the why, because it's a lot, but want to help people through it. And it's a very short period of time to try to understand why we're there, what that's going to mean, and why it's a hard pill for everyone, but we still think it's the right thing, and hope. I just hope we have enough support, right? It's a big change, and we need it at the special town meeting, and we'll need it at the special election too. We've got to pass in both. And assuming this doesn't, I don't think this will change between now and Monday when we have to finalize it. The 1831 will be on the special town meeting warrant, and it will be the same number on the ballot. And if at the special anything gets changed in the number, then the ballot, the vote is null. Even whatever it comes out, we have to go do another election, another special election on whatever the special town meeting number was.
Say that last part one more time.
If 1831 is the number, we go into special town meeting first. If that number gets approved,
Yeah.
then on that following Monday at the special election, if that number is approved, we're good. If at the special town meeting there is a motion on the floor to change the number, assuming we don't, to something different, and that is approved instead, the special election on that Monday it won't do anything, because the number can't be changed on the special election.
Ah.
So then we'll hold another special election about 40 days later with
Right.
the right number, the new number.
Oh, it has to be 40 days later?
I
So
think
it's 35 is the bare
35.
minimum after we approve it, the warrant, right?
Right.
So we've talked about possibly having time contingency on the Wednesday special to approve a new warrant that night, to do it 35 days later on the day, or
Yeah,
right around
like
that.
the next day, the 36th day.
Yeah.
Yeah, because the two have to
So-
match.
So let me I'm just gonna talk this through, because in case somebody asks me. So, we go to the special town meeting with this number, right?
Mm-hmm.
We can have an election 5 days, whatever it is, later.
We have one scheduled for that Monday.
Yeah, right?
The-
Yes,
yeah.
with
But-
this number.
But if we change this number, we've gotta wait 35 days to have another election?
Yeah,
From the special town meeting?
Yep.
Or the election date?
And that's.
From the date the board approves the new election warrant,
Okay.
which we can do within 3 to 5 business days, or maybe even that night, so,
And why I'm not understanding why we have to wait 35 days.
regulatory.
that's the,
Because
I look to you because you know it, but
if we approve it at the town meeting, you go.
The town clerk needs the 35 days to schedule the special election, get it posted in accordance with the law and our bylaws, get everything approved by the Secretary of State, get all the ballots ordered, get everything tested in
okay.
the ballot machine.
Okay.
So that whole process is 35 days.
I gotcha.
The
Good,
bare,
thank
bare
you.
minimum.
And that's the bare minimum. If
Sure.
everything goes smooth, it's 35 days.
No, and when you
Right.
explain it like that, it makes sense. You
Right,
gotta
yeah.
have time to print the ballots, you
Right.
gotta get everybody saying, okay,
Yep.
sure.
Yeah.
Okay, I understand now. Yep,
And so that's whether
So
it
that's
changes
why our
up or down,
timeline
it doesn't
is-
matter.
sure.
Yeah. And that's why we have this timeline built to try to get 2 special elections after the STM before December 31st.
Yep.
Well, end time, I should say, end time for the town departments to do everything to actually set the tax rate by then.
And you may have said this already, but just remind me, so are we firming the number today? Or we still have Monday, your Monday meeting, in case there's anything we have to think about overnight?
We have Monday.
Okay. So Monday's the deadline.
That's, yeah.
The current deadline.
The what?
If you're going to stay with a special election on October 23rd, Monday's the deadline to finalize the election warrant.
Okay.
And that's what
Thank
threw
you.
me off earlier in the meeting. Monday is because of the 35 days
Yep.
for the, not because of the STM date.
Correct.
I need 14 days for the STM.
But we're
Yep.
gonna finalize them both at the same time, because that, probably.
That would be
Yes,
appreciated.
Jackie?
So you're gonna want a new sheet with the new number?
If you don't mind doing one, I mean, it's very close. It'll be within, $1 or $2 for the residential anyways, impact. But yeah,
Right, because it's a lower number, isn't it? Than
It's a
what's-
higher.
It's a higher number.
by
Oh,
20
yes, I
or
see that, yes.
$18,000.
Yeah, okay.
But it,
Yep,
Yeah.
it's a little convoluted and skewed because of the minimum residential factor.
The
correct.
shifts and all
Yeah.
that, yeah.
Yeah, if you want to redo
Well-
it with the,
Yep, I can do that. You had no questions on the sheet? Everything was clear?
We're just getting there.
Okay.
I just got through the philosophical part, so thank you all.
All right, that's fine.
And then the execution. So you all have this, and thank you, Jackie. This is on 1813 versus 1831. At this point, I'd say we could just make it that if it was important, because the few dollars is probably not going to break the bank, but it's fine. And this is what our tax rate would be with what has already been approved in raise and appropriate levy limit at the annual and any changes in the special. This is plus what this override would do, all in one, right?
Yes, so the top number is what our levy limit currently is, which you pretty much, or will be maxing out. Then I added the 1.813,
yeah.
To it, and then these, just caveat, these are fiscal 23 values and not 24 values. I'm not there yet, there's a lot of things moving in the air. That's what the levy capacity is. So then over the chart over in the corner is what we would do if you shifted the 65% minimum residential factor, which is the lowest we can go by law. And then down in the other one, I just gave you some information, like what the single family home average is based on from 23 from the Department of Revenue. I needed to use a number for the average commercial. I used 400,000. I gave you what the average tax bill would have been for fiscal year 23, what it potentially would be if you didn't have the override, and what it would be with the override and the differences with that. Also, I calculated what the burden on the residential and open space would be versus what the burden on the commercial, industrial, and personal property is. It's basically a shade under 11% for residential and open space, and the remainder is, the burden is carried by the CIP.
And so, in summary, on an average, 238 and change thousand valued at home, our override impact, the override portion, would in theory be another $285.
No, I
I'm sorry, it would be
calculated what it was for you.
235,
Right,
sorry,
so-
$235.
Without the override, tax bills are gonna go up
About,
regardless, because you are at the levy limit. So based on the current values, and that would be, the average tax bill is gonna go up $239, I think, or $38. And then the other line is what it would be with your override. That includes the other one, but that's what I said, it includes the increase anyways. I think it's 21 cents the difference between last year's tax rate and the potential tax rate, if nothing changes, would be 21 cents for residential and open space. And sorry, I forgot what the commercial was. It was very early this morning. I was working on this.
It's all good. You've got it. 33 cents.
Yeah, so the override includes those other numbers because that was what it was, so. But they're not, and caution everyone, these are not set in stone because I'm working off old values and these are somewhat hypothetical.
They're generalities. They're
Yes,
not
they're generalities
exactly what everybody's
because
going to see.
I don't want to hear next, December, or, when you're setting the tax rate this December, you told me it was going to be blah, blah, blah.
Suddenly that 2.5 years got shorter. At that point. Generally, is it fair to say the 24 valuation when you're done won't go down?
No, it won't go down.
Okay, so the impact of the valuation going up would be a reduction in the overall tax impact here
It will
per
be
person.
a slight reduction. I don't expect a huge shift in the commercial, industrial, and personal property. I think that's gonna stay pretty stable. I will say the residential values are gonna go up though. People wanna live in Erving and they're paying huge money for their houses.
So much money.
Oh, so much.
money.
So, that will shift it a little, but I don't expect any big decreases.
And I just say that, yes, this is all based on older data. The newer data is going to potentially bring the tax rate per thousand down slightly if the values go up.
Yes.
But people's tax bills, because the residential value is higher, would probably go up a little more than expected. So it's
Yeah,
not a
so
perfect
even though-
science until it's done.
So even though the tax rate itself might go down, your values are gonna be higher, you're gonna be paying more. In our case, though, it's not as much of a burden because we shift to this commercial, industrial, and personal property. So they absorb more of the burden than the residential and open spaces.
Yes.
Am I missing it somewhere, that what the average single-family value is?
Second line in the yellow.
238,
The value of your house.
238.
Well, yes, that's the
Okay.
average, that is the single family average based on the DOR website. They
The
update it
residential.
every year.
Of your house?
Yes.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Yes.
So that's
I wasn't
all the
sure about that.
houses combined, some people are lower.
No, that's exactly why I wanted to know, because I didn't read that as that was the value of the house, so that's why I was trying to understand where that number came from. And then, is this something that the public is gonna see? And then, so, to the point, I know it says potential, but could we also maybe say, not a draft, what am I trying to say? Estimate. I know it says potential, but can we say estimate? I'm just worried that people are gonna be like, well, you said, and it's not. So could we mitigate that by using more estimate, more?
If you want to
those-
change the language on there, I just wanted it to be clear that these are not actual.
That's what I'm saying. I'm trying to help you with that and to prevent
Estimated
people from
potential,
being,
and
yeah.
I
He's
see
a
where
little
Mackenzie's going, and I think to me, potential sounds more concrete, where estimate sounds more, that could change, so I would personally use the term estimate. That's,
I agree. I think potential sounds like if you vote this, that's what happens,
Yeah,
rather than
yes.
rather than estimated
Yeah.
what the impact of your vote will.
Estimated is fine. It's-
We want to take it away from being, but Jackie said.
Yeah. I mean, exactly.
I guess my concern is that I don't want someone to say, you said my tax bill's only gonna go up X number of dollars, and that we cannot predict that.
And so you were gonna say a little thing at the bottom, this is 2023, 2024, numbers will be.
Well, it says there in the middle there, it says these are valid, it says, the values are based on the LA4 from fiscal year '23. That is the assessor's official document that sets the values, so, yeah.
so.
Yeah, I think it's that
again,
these FY24 values are estimated based on
Yeah.
the LA 23,
I
that's
can-
fine.
if-
Just,
Yeah.
we will wordsmith it before we put it in the
Right,
public
it's-
out, right?
Yeah.
It's difficult for me, when I was preparing it today, I was like, okay, I don't want too much techno in there, but I have to be clear where the documentation's coming from in case somebody wants to go back and look it up. So I wanted to make sure that it was clear where it was coming from. So if something's confusing to you, please feel like you can change it. It's fine with me. I just want to make sure that it's clear to you and the taxpayers.
To that, yeah, go ahead.
You know, one thing I was just gonna recommend is, we're all tracking and we have a sheet, but there's people who are arguably watching this on YouTube that don't have this benefit, so maybe if you would like to summarize what the estimates would mean to
Sure.
the average household of an increase.
Can do. I would also say the packet is available on the website to see the file that we're talking about, or will be tomorrow. We usually post them within a day or so of the meeting. So, inclusive of what was done already at the annual and the proposed override, the average, based on 23 values, anticipated, the average single-family home valuation was $238,352. And the estimated tax bill on that without the override is about $1,956 and change. The estimated tax bill with the override would be $2,242 and change. The estimated rate would be $9 if we did the full shift. Which we haven't voted, but it's what we have done historically. The estimated tax rate for residential open space would be $9.41 per thousand of value. And for commercial, industrial, and personal property, it would be estimated to be $15.44. So on the commercial, industrial, personal property side, which average value is less meaningful, I know, because there's a wide variety and a smaller pool. On an average $400,000 commercial valuation, the estimated no override bill for 24 would be $5,388. The estimated with override tax bill would be $6,176. Again, these are estimated, and these are based on a few $1,000s less than what we have come to tonight so far for the number. So they'll be slightly higher, but very slightly estimated. I think that it is a quick summary, but the data and the sheet is available, so if you have questions. Does that make sense to everybody here who has it in front of them now? And I think on the average household value from last year, the estimated difference, right, the extra money for the override is about $235 on that average house value. You have 50 without, 285 with.
Yeah,
I- so,
50
Yeah.
without 285, yeah, so
285, so 235.
235 is the delta, yeah.
So the potential with the override would be the 285.51, correct? Yes.
Yep. So your bill is estimated today on average, single family value of $238,000 to go up by $50 from last year.
Yes.
If we did the override, it's estimated to go up about $285.
Yes.
And just for the sake of those watching, it's a permanent change, so in FY25, that means could go up to 2.5% on that new $285 higher bill.
So basically, your new levy would be what the top number is, which is, I think, the 14 million and change. Then you would have 2.5 over that. That becomes the new levy on the override. So,
Right.
So you would
Just
have-
to be clear, the 285 is
Yes.
a permanent increase,
It
and
would
then it
be,
will
yes.
potentially go up from there.
and when
Not going
values
back down.
change, yes, up or down.
questions?
Thank you.
Yeah, no, thank you for bringing it up. It's a good point. Okay. So that's our plan. We'll get an updated sheet. I would ask, and we can do this a couple different ways when we do the informational session, how we present the data. We have a little more time for that to make it as hopefully clear and straightforward as possible. I look at this and I wonder if we should do one that's just the change for the override versus the overall tax impact. We can have both, but
It's a very easy table that just shows you what the impact is. That's the Norwood example. It's the last page.
oh.
It's
I
a
was like,
very
what are you showing me?
simple, so
Okay.
you can look at it and say, here's the change. I forwarded it to you. Just take a look at the last page, maybe as an example of.
Yeah, however you want it
So we can
done.
display it and talk about the potential change or the estimated change.
So I think we'll
Yeah, I think.
we'll get the new sheet with the slightly adjusted numbers, and then we can talk about different ways over the next couple meetings to presenting it as clearly as possible. We'll come back to this after, right?
Yeah, that's
Okay.
just. that
Or
was
at a future
talking
meeting,
point. Yeah,
yep,
it could
yep.
even be a future meeting.
We have an agenda that has something else on it, I think. The STM, before we start breaking up some of the joint meeting here. Just talking through that draft.
The school committee members don't have the STM warrant because there's nothing on there for the
Yeah,
school.
they didn't present.
Except the reserve article.
I take
the
that
revolving
back. It is
article.
on there.
It's okay.
It's on
I
there.
can talk to it. It's
Exactly
not-
the way that we drafted it.
So, in our draft, and that date is set for Wednesday, October 18th at 7 at the elementary school. I'll go through them all quickly, if you all don't mind. The first article is appropriation for FY23 prior year expenses. We have a small bill for the Conservation Commission, 196 and change, and $820 bill for the Water Department, so about just over $1,000 of prior year expenses to approve. The second article is to amend the FY24 elected official compensation. So we finalized the wage adjustments for all non-collective bargaining town employees. Those who are on that schedule, who are elected officials, who had a change, the compensation set by voters, so they do not see that change in compensation unless this is approved. So it hasn't impacted any of those affected elected officials. That money already exists in the bucket of money that we allocated for that in the annual town meeting. Article 3 is to amend the general operating budget, which would be raising the override, if you will, part of the override, raising general government, public safety, public works, health and human services, culture and rec, and benefits. That portion of the override, it will have to be broken up into a couple pieces, and adjusting those accordingly. The Article 4 is the wastewater department adjustment, because it's an enterprise fund, so that one's called out separately. And then did I miss that? And then we need a fifth one for capital. We need an amended or a new capital
You
article.
need to put it somewhere though, so yes, you'll need something, but it needs to go somewhere. We can't just say for capital, so.
I assume everything that
Stabilization.
isn't the capital projects and, the number's not changing, so at the next capital meeting, can the capital planning committee review any of the outstanding capital items that got pushed or removed and see if they are coming out of that 125, that 955 number, whatever it is now, and come back with how many of those are funded projects for this year now out of that money, and the rest, I assume, we'll put in capital stabilization.
Nothing.
You mean for FY '24?
Yes.
I believe FY '24, the projects were funded.
No, there's the 5 and the 50 that are in
Oh,
our
okay,
table.
yeah.
Like anything of those, if we're going to fund them for this year to actually execute them, then that's going to be part of a new capital article. And then whatever's left to be deposited.
So I'm
Or-
drafting 2 capital articles.
You are, and if I recall, it's going to be deposit the whole amount.
Okay.
And then it's going to be to transfer out and fund the projects.
Capital
Yes.
doesn't meet until the 20th, and we cannot meet sooner. There's,
That's fine.
okay, just making sure.
That can be fine.
Or
We
21st,
can,
next
we can
week.
decide on it Monday. If we can't, we can make an adjustment. But the STM, we have time to finalize. As long as the number total doesn't change, the how we spend it can still fluctuate. Only the warrant for elections has to be final Monday.
So if we were gonna, if the school committee was gonna modify any of their capital plan, projects, that has to be at the town meeting, because it was voted for at the town meeting, would that be the appropriate time to do it? Or should we talk about that at some other point?
If you were ready to by
Monday?
Okay.
Yes. it
by
has to be.
a week or two from Monday at the very latest, like within your next meeting, if you made a decision to do something and you wanted a warrant article to do something with it. The funds for existing projects live in revolving accounts that are dedicated to that project only.
Right, that's what I'm
Voters
thinking.
to move it to a different project, move it to free cash, close it out to, really it should be to capital stabilization. Any of those functions would require a vote.
Right, that's why
Does
I'm
it-
asking if that's
yeah.
the appropriate time to be dealing with that.
We can do it then, we can do it at the next annual, we can do it the next special beyond this
Yeah.
one. It's a very short time window, so unless you're sure and you're ready, not saying you shouldn't, we can
Yep.
fit it in, but it's a really tight timeline.
But it's been sitting there this long, we
Yep.
could probably wait till another meeting.
Yep, either way, yep.
I would just have my only concern with that is when rec wanted to change some of their capital, that did come before the capital committee, and so is there time for that process to happen? That happened at a joint meeting, but capital had the opportunity to weigh in and say, yes, we support you changing those things, or no, we do not.
Well, I think capital's next meeting follows school's next meeting. So if we get it on the agendas before, the capital agenda before, it has to be posted. And all of that happened between one meeting and one meeting to come back to one meeting here? Sure. I think it
Are you
sounds a
saying we're
little,
not efficient and can't get things done quickly?
I'm saying this is municipal
That sounds like a
government
challenge you
and
can't do. You can pull this off.
if we have to, we can. We tend not to if we don't have to. So it could be done,
Okay,
but it doesn't have to be done. 2 articles.
Okay.
Am I correct that capital, we want to put all of it in, and then whatever projects we are going to fund out of it, we will be a separate article fund out of?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay. And for the record, the purpose of that is if we stop funding them out of whatever funding source that we generated the money in the fiscal year and put that into stabilization, and then fund all projects out of stabilization, when they close out, any excess goes back to the stabilization, not to free cash. So it keeps the capital money in the capital funding. That was Article 5 and 6 that haven't been drafted yet. And then what will be Article 7 is the establishment of the Special Ed Reserve Fund. And the language is exactly what you all got officially is the right thing. So that's what's on there. And then 8 is appropriation of opioid settlement to the stabilization.
Correct.
Should we have an article on here? And maybe you asked me this and I didn't answer. We have received $100,000 for lead. Officially?
Yeah, I was gonna ask you about that.
Did it come in?
Meeting, yes, we had $100,000.
It came.
Yeah, it came.
So the
For
$100,000
the
is part,
library?
Oh,
is
for
part
the
of the
lead,
library
for the
payback. For the lead,
certification.
it came, yeah. So it's
excellent.
finally, it's
It
like
took-
so
it took 3
exciting.
years.
So I don't want to minimize that. Like all these years in the making, we got the $100,000 from technically MBLC, but for the lead certification.
Yes.
For the new library. So woohoo.
excellent.
Very exciting. And off of that, do we want to put an article on to put that in general stabilization because that's part of our
That's where it's
payback
supposed to go
plan
back. Yep.
while we're
I
here?
can put it on there. As long as it's been received?
It's been received, yep.
Okay.
Yeah, that's why we dropped one of the payments down to
think it was
whatever it
on Monday.
was, 140 instead of 2.
We got to go back and do, and that's part of the library discussion
Yeah.
that I want to have.
Yep.
I know I harp on this, but there was a time when we did this project, that money was promised from the library to go to the funding. And I don't believe I've ever seen an article for that to happen. So is that something that the trustees will be?
That's
moving
the
forward on?
conversation I want to schedule with them.
Okay,
Is closing this project out. We have the 100, we have the project. It's basically all the last expenses are pretty much in, and all the funding that was committed. And did we do the full payback for everything we borrowed like we were supposed to? Does everything net out? Is everything been funded the way it should have? Are we good? And
Met with the director
cetera.
this morning. She's getting ready to meet with the trustees on that exact topic.
good. And then I think we come back, we can do that review of that. It's a very large project, one of the first ones we've done, kind of under some of these processes. So, be very good.
that was my next question. Are we at a point where we actually get to close this out and say we're done 100%?
Done on the funding and the big contracts. There are issues with the building
Okay.
that need to continue to be worked on.
Okay,
But in terms of the overall construction project fund, all the
That can be
expenses
closed.
that came out of
Okay.
that, the closure of all of those articles that were large sums and
Yes.
payback, what we have now is
Right.
either just a small call out or
Correct.
it's operational challenges and costs.
Correct.
okay.
Yep.
All right.
So yes, I think the
So
short,
yay,
the
library,
short
it's
answer was
done.
yes.
Say it's done.
We can like put a pin in it. There's a bow on the money, but maybe not everything.
So I will add that article after. the
Please.
others. Okay.
As another stabilization transfer.
Yep. Okay.
Okay, so that's what's on our STM. Good?
So review that again on Monday.
Yes, please.
Okay.
Yes, I mean, yes. What's today? Yes.
In joint meetings, select FinCom.
That's the next question. Does the school committee want to rejoin us on Monday when we're going to finalize this? I don't
I mean,
have any preference, but I don't.
do we feel like there's gonna be a difference that we need to,
I don't think there's going to be
Hopefully
a
all
change.
support? No.
yeah.
It's going to be presenting the documents that we've all talked about with actual numbers.
Yeah.
Okay.
One
And
or
then
two of
just-
us has to attend the joint supervisory on Monday. We have a,
Oh,
Union
that's
20,
right,
yeah.
that's right, yeah, so.
No, I think
what's
it's
the date
fine.
back
I
then?
Yeah.
just wanted to,
Yeah.
if we wanted to
Extend the
post it or
courtesy,
not.
yeah.
Yeah, so I
Forgot
think we're good.
which day. I mean, Monday.
All right.
If there's
Mondays
stuff
with
to
people.
talk about capital at our next meeting, if you wanted to, like if you've done all that and there's some discussion about moving something around in the STM, then invite you for the next one after that.
Okay.
Okay, so capital, FinCom, board, Monday.
Okay. 7?
Yes.
Okay.
And we can let you all know if nothing has changed in numbers or anything materially from anything we did here, except we have the updated this. I don't know if there'll be a lot to discuss, so we can always, chairs can always make a decision whether or not to actually come, or if that makes sense to.
Well, FinCom would have to approve the warrant, so we'd have to be here anyway.
Yeah, you
Votes on
need to do recommendations, not on the election warrant.
Nope. Not on the election
So
warrant.
you don't necessarily have to, because I don't think we're gonna finalize it till the following meeting
For the STM, okay.
for the STM.
I will go out on a limb and say if FinCom doesn't
But-
have to be here, we have no problem not.
Yes, sir.
Just know if you- Never mind,
I
you all
know,
can
I know,
handle
I
it.
we'll take care of it.
Okay.
We've got it. We can do it. What's going somewhere with that? I will also just we'll send out a notice if we want to do a little bit more planning on the informational session in that meeting Monday as well. If we're ready to, I don't know that we will be, it's just a few days, so I'll let you know so you can come for that, but I don't think we will.
Okay.
That covered all the joint topics, right? Yes, okay. Anything else for us? How quickly can I make the motion that we
Second.
adjourn the joint meeting with Finance Committee, Capital Planning Committee, and the School Committee and continue the Select Board meeting? Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you, everyone, for
Thank you.
joining us and for the long haul. Okay, from here. through STM quickly. There's nothing else anyone else saw, right, other than we'll add a couple articles and tweak some of that. All good?
Yep.
Okay.
Adjustments, revisions as needed, good to go otherwise.
Okay. I believe we should, we can redraft it with the following meeting date. You can redraft it with the following meeting date, not Monday, as the anticipated
October 2nd.
sign date. Yeah. Yeah, is that the date? I thought it was, yeah, October 2nd.
Sign- For which one?
STM,
Okay,
to final STM.
yeah.
Election will be Monday, 18.
And you all saw I drafted a warrant on the Vermont Press Council and the election warrant, and the
Yep.
town clerk.
I didn't get there yet, but.
You talking about the draft ballot, election ballot? that
So,
one? Yeah.
review of the, yeah, the draft election ballot.
So the number's not changing, so that additional is gonna be the 1831?
That's the number,
Yep.
1831.
And then I need to state the purpose. And in that primer that I included in your packet, there's some examples of how you state the purpose. So I don't know if you have a preference as to how you want me to characterize. So if we go to, there's a very detailed explanation, but if you go to page 13 of the primer, it's called Appendix B. It's got like a 2-page explanation or examples of how to word that sentence.
I mean, the second one seems to make sense, just funding operating expenses and capital expenditures.
Sufficient?
That's how we broke it down.
Why do I feel like I'm rolling right by what you're talking about?
It's,
Which page is it?
It's right,
Page
so,
13.
it's page 13 on that DLS.
On that document?
Yeah.
Yeah,
So it's
so it's
page
not
38
13 of the whole
overall.
packet.
38
Yeah,
in your
yeah, I
packet.
gotcha,
Yeah.
okay. There's an appendix within the, before the appendixes in the
Probably.
document.
Of course.
You don't like an appendix to an appendix?
So on page, I think it's 3 or 5 or 8, there's appendix A, and I couldn't find B, and I found C, I think, and I'm like, where am I missing?
Yeah.
Right,
Actually, it's
see.
38 in your packet.
It's okay, no, I'm like, felt like I was
Right
losing
before
it. I
the-
remember reading some of this, and I'm like, I'm good now. Anyway, moving on.
Right before the large intestine, it was drafted by a colon, so.
The You said the second one made sense?
Second bullet.
Yeah.
Second bullet, yeah?
Yeah, just funding operating expenses and capital expenditures.
I mean, that's, I feel like these are getting less and less broad as you go down
Correct.
in the bullets. And like we're doing 3, parts of 3 and
Right.
others, but I think the second bullet makes sense to me.
Right, and the only reason I went with the second one is because we have capital in there as well.
Yeah.
Otherwise, I
think it
would have
makes
said the
sense.
first one.
Right.
Yeah,
Okay, so it's I'll word it to reflect that.
Bullet 2.
yep.
Okay, so I'll fix that, send it to town clerk and council for vetting. and we'll get it ready for Monday.
And so Monday is our last, because he has to be able to post it before 10 a.m. on Tuesday so that we can make the 10 a.m. deadline for the actual polls opening. Okay.
If you're going to keep the 23rd as your date.
Correct.
If you change that date, then he has a little more time.
I think we want to keep the 23rd, right?
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah.
So
So Monday we'll,
we can, so we're going to meet at 6:30 Monday.
Yep.
The number's not changing. The language is decided.
You can put that first on
We
your
could let
agenda.
him know that it should be done, and we can sign it right then at set by 7 if he wants to post the night before, just have it done.
right,
Or he can get it first thing in the morning, whichever
and
he
post
wants.
it, as long as it's posted before 10. That's all.
Okay, because it's just, we need a constable, right? Oh,
Yep.
Yep.
Yeah, so if we want to share that back, just so they know.
Okay. I
Their
will
choice,
know
but
that.
we can have it done by 7.
No, I would-
I know we've had him walk out of here with it at 7:30
Yeah, I have-
and go post for meetings. Or
I have
hey, or
no
whatever,
problem, if he's willing to come and hang around, we'll sign the attested copy and he can take it with him.
So. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay. Back to the top, surplus equipment request, rec department, third read. I assume if we motion on all of the items to be dispositioned as listed.
That's what I was
um,
wondering.
And after internal first right of refusal or something, to just ensure that we get like the mats checked before.
Yep.
Okay,
Is that your motion?
sounded like one. Make a motion that we surplus the recreation equipment as presented on the various disposition requests with the disposition as recommended for each, and a first right of refusal with other departments of any items that may be useful before continuing on with that disposition.
Second.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Sorry, that was not very cohesive, but at least it did it.
You got the job done.
Do not have, we'll pass over the minutes, September 6th. Request to establish and appoint a custodial screening committee.
So, second.
Yes.
Thank you.
Okay. So for the custodian vacancy, or the position that we're hiring for, Superintendent McCrory recommend a 5-member committee with, I'm just going to start over and make a motion because I'm going
It's
to
just
say all the
easier.
stuff anyway.
Yep.
I'll make a motion that we establish a custodial screening committee and appoint 5 members. Selectman Scott Bastrash, FinCom Chair Deb Smith, Foreman Thomas Duffy, forgetting the first part of her title, Custodian Rebecca Walsh, and Superintendent Glenn McCrory to said committee.
Second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Make a motion, we establish an equipment operator screening committee of 5 members and appoint Selectman Scott Bastrash, FinCom Chair Deb Smith, Foreman Thomas Duffy, Operator Cody Pease, and Superintendent Glenn McCrory.
I will second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. We have first reads on financial management policy drafts, revenue turnover, invoice payments, and encumbrances and accounts payable. First reads on all 3 of those. I'm sorry, 4, grants management.
Yep.
That's the 4th one. First reads on all 4 of those policies. I'll take comment if there is any, but I assume first read will,
Yeah, you'll take comments on any
Any
of the 4? Okay.
if you have them, we'll take them.
So on the invoice,
Payment process, yep.
yep. So in section 5, line 6, it states that all checks must be mailed directly to the vendor. The town treasurer must approve any exceptions. Just wondering if we want to use the word must there. Are there any opportunities to make these payments by ACH or Unibank, Unipay, whatever it's called these days?
We do use ACH, so we could add a clarifying phrase in there to note that that's an option. I think what that was trying to address was if you're a local vendor and you said, I'm just gonna have somebody stop by and pick that check up, or you can just leave it at the front desk or something like that. The treasurer's office is responsible for direct payment to the vendor. So we could add the ACH because that would be an electronic file that the treasurer would oversee the processing of. And that would be, in essence, the exact same transaction.
Right, the language as it states must,
Yep.
sort of limits that option, so.
I think it's assuming if it's a check, must do that. If it's something else, it's
Right.
ambiguous.
Right.
I think
Right.
to be specific is what your point, right? Yeah.
But the way it's written, it's not,
Section
so
5
again, maybe I'm
procedures.
being a little over.
Nope. We've reread
Overzealous.
these multiple times, and even today, the financial team came up with some new suggestions at like the last hour that I'll bring to you at the second read.
No, I think another bullet that says something like you said, which is all ACH payments must be, overseen and approved by the treasurer. And then you've captured that's another type in there.
Yep.
Okay. Under grants in section 4, the first line should be a comma after the word, so it states.
Did we switch
It-
policies? or
Grants.
we assume?
Grants.
Grant policy.
Grants.
Grant policy,
management.
yep, sorry.
Okay. Section 4, in the first line, said, a grant requires matching funds. There should be a comma after that.
Yep.
Just for grammatical.
The grant matching funds, where's that?
It's section 4,
Yeah. In the-
subsection A.
Oh, in A,
Oh,
okay.
I'm sorry.
Yeah, first
Yeah,
line in A.
I wrote some quick,
And there should be a comma in the first sentence of section 4 before
Yeah.
After
A,
funds.
after department.
No.
If a grant requires matching funds, comma, the responsible party board is required.
Comma after funds.
No, after department. Right? Am I thinking that
Yeah.
wrong?
Nope.
No,
No, I
I'm
have
thinking that
to-
wrong. I'm sorry, I'm tired.
Nope, we're good.
No, yeah, there should be a comma after department, right?
No.
Board, comma, commission, comma, committee, comma, department, comma,
And then
or.
go down to subsection A. In that.
Yeah.
I'm talking about the first sentence in 4, not A.
I know, but I wanted to
Shouldn't-
finish his
Oh, I thought we
amendment
did.
first.
I'm sorry, I thought we already
I
did.
thought we were still talking about gyms.
No, I'm
Oh, you
sorry.
moved
Go
on,
ahead,
okay.
go ahead.
No, it's fine if we're good with that.
yeah.
Oh,
I'm good with that comma now,
Okay.
once you said A and I got where it was, yes.
Got it,
I'm
okay.
sorry, and then, yes, I moved forward.
Jake wants a comma.
Above that, since you were there, I didn't want to go past that
Okay.
if you had another
Yeah,
one.
I kind of bounced around.
It's all good.
I was going off handwritten and what I wrote this morning in Word.
I will add that.
Just above A, there's a comment after department.
Yep.
Should be in that first line, okay.
And then in the revenue turnover policy, section 4, under policies, language as written states, each department that receives payments is responsible for instituting and employing internal controls designed to ensure all receipts are recorded accurately, kept secure from loss or theft, and turned over to the treasurer. It says turned over timely to the treasurer. I'm recommending we strike the word timely. After the word treasurer, we add as soon as reasonably possible, but no later than 1 week after receipt. Timely is sort of a
Nope.
arbitrary word. And then I'm recommending that we strike each department must turn over at least weekly and must do immediately whenever cash is received. The only reason I'm saying that is not every department has receipts to turn over weekly, so to say they must turn over something when they have nothing. I understand what the intent is, but I think the language should be more accurate.
How do you want that sentence to read now? We're going to strike that last sentence.
So I'll read the whole, starting, each department that receives payments is responsible for instituting and employing internal controls designed to ensure that all receipts are recorded accurately, kept secure from loss or theft, and turned over to the treasurer as soon as reasonably possible, but no more than 1 week after receipt, period.
Okay.
And so striking the last sentence takes away that cash was immediate rather than in a week, right? And that was at least that's how I read it. I don't know if that was the
Right.
intent, that cash would be immediate. Everything else had to be done within a week. If you covered within the week, I don't know if we want to readdress cash or not. Or if that's important language. Maybe we can ask
Well, I
that.
think your suggestion was cash was to be immediately upon receipt.
He didn't say anything about it. You struck that whole last
Right,
sentence,
well,
right?
so the example I'm thinking of is Chief Holst receives a cash payment for an LTC renewal. And he issues a receipt to our resident.
Right.
He takes the funds and then he gets a hot call that he has to go to because there is he cannot
Fair.
respond to that hot call and drop the $100 off immediately
Right.
to the treasurer's office on his way to protect life and property.
Right.
So
With the new accounting system that we're implementing, we should be able to automate the cash management portion of this. Right now, it's all manually done. So live time as that transaction occurred, a receipt is generated to the party paying. That receipt generates an anticipation of cash to be received in the treasurer's office. So the treasurer's office is already flagged, even though physically the money hasn't made it there yet, they're already flagged with an anticipation that there's $5 coming from the PD for that purpose. And so I think we still get accountability with the recognition that there's still maybe a time delay between when that cash was received and when it gets to that office.
And that
think
will
it's good.
improve because today they don't know they don't have it.
right.
Treasurers
Then
even
they'll know
to
it's
anticipate it.
coming, it's just not here yet, and they
Right.
can follow up, so there's some checks and
Okay. Yep.
balances. Okay. So you're saying, it sounds like, we'll see what the rest of the financial team says, but just striking the last sentence is probably okay if we say as soon as reasonably possible, but within a week.
Right.
Okay.
And I know that the treasurer, a couple hours before this meeting, had just a little more thought in that area, so I'll take your comments, I will take her suggestions, try to marry the two things together, put it back out for your draft on Monday.
Okay.
Yep.
Maybe not for Monday, but there is a way to show track changes in the PDF from a Word document.
Perfect.
So we can
Sounds
kind of
good.
bridge which documents and how many do we use.
Yeah,
Yeah.
that would
So
be
I
helpful.
can help you with that.
Perfect, because
Good
right now,
chance.
all of this is in track changes, so that'd be wonderful.
Right, and I know we're going to want to see the red line and know,
Yep.
like,
Yep.
okay, this was our red
I
line
always create
change,
them
that was
separately
their
for you.
blue line change, and what's going on, right?
Perfect.
So-
I'll be happy to attend the in-service training on how it's done.
Yes. Yes.
All right, I'll put it on the calendar and schedule it.
Put it.
Our
Put up
training
the
roster has been busy.
So, yeah, that's all that I had for now,
No, this is good
Okay.
feedback.
Thank you.
what I could come up with at 4 a.m.
Did you have anything else for the policies, first reads?
No,
Okay. I had a comma, so I didn't really contribute much. Review of the,
With just on this topic, as I was meeting with departments today, 2 more financial management policies came up as requests, so I'm going to start working with the financial team on those 2. But you already have probably another 10 policies that do exist. I'd like to find time to just refresh them, make sure they're current, but get them all numbered in the numbering system. We left all of those blank in the past. So sort of like with the personnel policies, as we were re-adopting, we assigned numbers and created structure. I think we need to do that for these as well.
let's
So
bring them on
feedback.
in a future meeting, and then if we do a read and there's no changes,
Yep.
other than numbering, I'd say we can adopt a number change, after a one read.
Right.
But if we find there's content that needs to get
do the
updated, because
three
it's been a
reads.
little while, we'll pull through 3.
Okay.
That make sense?
Yep, perfect. Works for me.
Review of the deadline extension request for the senior housing development RFP.
I have no concerns with it. I know that the Senior Housing Committee, at least one of the members weighed in and was happy to see that extended or allowing it. So I'll go ahead and make a motion to amend the Care Drive Senior Housing request for proposals by changing the deadline for submissions to be 3 p.m. on Wednesday, October 25th, 2023.
I will second that.
All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Thank you.
Anything I skipped over?
Nope. That's it.
I think the other one's just circling back is a question about a moderator, which we have a little time to sort out and confirm back that that is the date. See what he says and see if there's at least people who plan to be there who would be willing to be nominated. And checking on council.
I'll follow up on that.
Did you start to say something? No?
Nope.
Okay. With that, I'll make a motion we go into executive session pursuant to Mass General Law, Chapter 30A, Section 21A7, to comply with or act under the authority of any general or special law or federal grant and aid requirements for the review and consideration of a housing rehabilitation loan forgiveness application and supporting documentation, which includes confidential information protected by law. Is there a second?
Second.
We will not return to regular session. A roll call vote. All those in favor? Brian, will you call the roll?
Selectman Wong,
Aye.
Selectman Bassarage,
Aye.
Chairman Smith.
Aye. Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.